Part 109. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1082. Duan Gilan knew that Shen Tenguin usually stayed at home and read Sage's books at home, but occasionally he would meet up with a group of close friends to chat every 3 to 5 days. When others talked about Shen Tenguin, they praised every word, which made Duan Gilan feel more and more angry. As in the plot, after Duan Gilan crouched not far from Shen's house and stared at Shen Tenguin for 2 days, he found out that he was going to meet him the next day. A group of friends met to recite poems for poetry. This was the first time Duan Gilan knew that Shen Tenguin was going out in the 2 days since he had been staring at him, so she immediately decided to follow him. Of course, her mood at this time is completely different from that of her in the plot. She is not doing it for the sake of her sister or trying to find fault with Shen Tenguin, but simply because she wants to vent her anger. She wanted to follow Shen Tenguin, find out his mistakes, and prove that Shen Tenguin, who Lily, Lu, and others had agreed to, was not as good as they thought. She wanted to make Lily unable to step down after knowing the truth, and let her know that she had been beaten. Just the consequences. So she slipped out of the door early the next morning. As soon as Duan Gilan left, Lily noticed it with her hind legs. Duan Gilan has been abnormal these past 2 days. After he beat her up 2 days ago, it would be strange if she didn't play some prank to get back at her based on her personality. However, she has been running out all day these past 2 days and will not come back until dark. After returning home, he never mentioned anything about what happened before, but became mysterious. Lily didn't need to think about it, she just remembered that in the plot, Duan Gilan followed Shen Tenguin when Duan Behi was about to get engaged, causing great trouble. It happened to be this moment in time. Although the exact date was a few days off, after all, the development of things now was somewhat different from the plot. Even if the time is off by a few minutes, it is very possible. And just because this incident was a disaster for Duan Behi, it ended up creating a perfect marriage between Shen Tenguin and Duan Gilan. In the end, Duan Gilan's misbehavior disrupted Duan Behi's marriage, which was supposed to be the most difficult. She married the right man. Things happen again. Duan Gilan messed up Duan Behi's good things once, and this time it was time for him to mess up her good things. Even if these two people are the red thread that Yu Lao has already tied in his hands, and they are a pair created by nature, if they want to be as smooth as in the plot. But it is absolutely impossible. Just as Duan Gilan walked away, Lily also turned around and entered the backyard. Ms. Lu stayed in the shop for the past 2 days to nurse her legs and could not go anywhere. As soon as she left, Ms. Lu raised her eyelids and wanted to get angry. After all, the business in the shop was not as good as before and she could not afford to hire anyone. My leg is injured and I can't move while sitting. If a guest comes, who will greet the guest if there is no one in the shop? Just thinking of how this eldest daughter beat Duan Gilan like that a few days ago, and how badly she fell because of her, Lily never said a word to her from beginning to end. Lu didn't even say a word to comfort her when she admitted her mistake. Ms. Lu felt uncomfortable when she thought about it, so she deliberately cold-hearted her and didn't open her mouth to her for 2 or 3 days in a row. Although she wanted to get angry at this moment, she didn't want to bow her head first. So she suppressed her dissatisfaction and watched Lily enter the backyard, and she was so angry that she beat the cabinet. Lily had already predicted this day, so in the past few years, she used her time to do embroidery work on weekdays. I picked up a lot of rags and pieced them together to make a patchwork robe. Now I put it on my body, took off my split hair and tied it up, put on my feet, and went out, feeling that Ms. Lu was still in the shop in front. There was no one else in the backyard, so she raised her spiritual power. Her body flew up lightly, stepped on the roof, and in the blink of an eye, she was out of the Duan family yard. In the middle of the plot, Lily also knows where the shipyard where Gilan caused trouble is. After all, Mrs. Lu was so worried about this incident that she sold the cloth shop and lost some money. At this time, Lily came out of Duan's house and saw the right direction. Just run towards that place first. She was going to take a look first. If she didn't see Duan Gilan, she would just look for him one by one then. Although the banks of the Huihe River are large, she has Qinggong, and although there are many shipyards, it is not difficult for Lily. She first went to the painting studio where Duan Gilan caused trouble, and waited under a willow tree. The weather has entered autumn, and there are many shipyards parked on both sides of the river. Because it is not yet night, many of the shipyards are not busy, and the red lanterns hanging above are not bright. Among the shipyards where the accident occurred in the plot, although the gauze hung down and she couldn't see clearly what was going on inside, but the sound of silk and bamboo and the female laughter of warblers and swallows came to Lily's ears. Many brothels were not open in the broad daylight. It can be imagined that Shen Tenguin and his party, most of the people are in this shipyard. Lily thought for a while and decided to get on the boat and wait. Although there were many people by the river, no one noticed her at all. She was so fast that others only felt her shadow flickering, as if someone was moving. When they looked again, they thought they had seen it wrong. The shipyard is huge. Many girls received guests last night and were sleeping soundly with their arms around their benefactors. The doors of many rooms were tightly locked. The fragrance of powder and powder all around was pleasant. Lily's ears were extremely sensitive. When someone came, she would jump into the room. Liang hid, so that when she came to the place where Sizu was teasing, no one noticed her at all. Lily carefully hid her body on the roof of the beam. There were 7 or 8 people wearing Confucian shirts below, each with a woman sitting next to them. A pot of tea was already boiling in front of them. One of the young men with a gentle appearance, a scarf tied around his head, and a blue shirt was none other than Shen Tenguin. Seeing Shen Tenguin, Lily felt relieved. She had made the right move this time and there was no need to look around anymore. "Brother Shen, I heard that your father-in-law has made an engagement with you." Brother Shen is really blessed with double happiness. A young man wearing a lake green robe smiled at Shen Tenguin with his arms folded and a folding fan in his hand. After speaking, the fan was shaken open by him with a swipe. As the saying goes, on the wedding night, when the gold medal is named, although Brother Shen did not come to the gold medal, he was also a scholar this year, and now he wants to marry a wife. What a joy to congratulate! Shen Tenguin's eyebrows were furrowed. He was thin, but his appearance was indeed gentle. There was a bookish air between his brows. The blue shirt on him made him appear skinny and skeletal, giving people a sense of justice and dignity. At this moment, when everyone heard the words of the young man with the fan, they couldn't help but say congratulations, congratulations in unison. However, Shen Tenguin didn't necessarily show much joy. If you haven't achieved success and you haven't achieved fame, how can you talk about getting a wife? Drinking. Drink wine. I just don't know what that lady looks like. If she is a first-class beauty, Brother Shen is talented, and that lady is pretty, then she is a match made in heaven. Another scholar patted his thigh with his hand, and Shen Tenguin, hearing this, his brows furrowed. I haven't even met each other. It is said that the Duan family has a bad reputation. If they are virtuous and virtuous, I am afraid that their reputation will not spread. Shen Tenguin was depressed and unhappy. After knowing that his parents had arranged a marriage for him, he also expressed his feelings to the family he had never met. His wife had some fantasies, so she asked someone to inquire about it, but she heard that the girl from the Duan family had a bad reputation. At that moment, Shen Tenguin felt a chill in his heart. Even if Mrs. Shen, who was the matchmaker this time, talked to him in a very fancy way, he didn't believe it at all. Shen Tenguin had objected to his parents, but they had settled the matter with him. Although he had been selected as a scholar, he did not have to pay taxes and tribute to the court every year when he farmed, but there were some benefits but not many. His father is a scholar like him. He only knows how to recite poems and write poems all day long. He is not good at making a living. All his life depends on his mother. The family relies on pawns to make a living and is now heavily in debt. If he wanted to study, pens, ink, paper and inkstones would be a huge expense every year, and he would not be able to make ends meet in the long run. He is getting older. Although he was selected as a scholar this year, he is not the only young and promising scholar in Huaicheng. He is only handsome in appearance, not tall and powerful. Girls from really wealthy families may not like him. He was chosen because the Duan family was well off, and Mrs. Liu had mentioned to Mrs. Shen that as long as he married a girl from the Duan family, the dowry would be larger. If his wife had money, he could continue his studies. In this way, he will concentrate on his books from now on, and he may be able to win the imperial examination in 3 years. Even if it doesn't work, the money from Lily's dowry will be enough to support him. Then he can find a job as a master, and once he joins the county magistrate's job, with good luck and some money, I might be able to become an official in this life. His parents analyzed the interests with him very clearly, and Shen Tenguan finally had no choice but to agree. But even though he agreed, he was not necessarily happy in his heart. After all, although his mother and aunt repeatedly mentioned the beauty of this lady, in Shen Tenguan's view, it was all just to make him happy. If Lily is really as virtuous and beautiful as they say, why is she 17 years old and yet she hasn't spoken to anyone yet? The average girl is 15 or 16 years old, who doesn't get married. There must be a reason for delaying marriage until now. Ever since he got married, he has never been happy. Today he went out to have a good time with a group of literati, and heard his classmates mention this matter, which just touched Shen Tenguan's unhappiness. He shook his head and composed 2 more poems. Brother Shen, maybe he's an ignorant and talkative woman in the market. I just heard it from hearsay. Someone looked at his depressed look and awkwardly explained. Shen Tenguan didn't appreciate it. He just sneered twice when he heard this. It's just a rumor, but it may not be without reason. After he said this, everyone hurriedly cheered and drank, and then the matter was settled. I heard that the scholar is excellent at calligraphy and painting, so why not paint a picture and write a poem for the slave family? The woman sitting next to Shen Tenguan leaned towards him with a wink, while picking up Shen Tenguan's calligraphy. If the ladies on the banks of the Huihe River can get a copy of the scholar's calligraphy, if the scholar achieves a little success in the future, the girl's net worth will increase more than 10 times. Therefore, once someone asks for portraits and poems, the others will also start to write poems. Begging softly. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1083. For a while, there were soft whispers in the shipyard, and Lily was lying on the beam. After seeing Shen Tenguan unable to resist the girl rubbing herself against him and acting coquettishly, the 18-year-old boy's ears turned red. Although he was pretending in his heart today it was over, but at this time, being begged for calligraphy treasures in front of a group of fans, I felt a bit of pride and ambition in my heart. Gradually, my face became more interesting, and I smiled. Just when I was about to respond to the entreaties of these girls, suddenly a sound of ouch rang out, followed by a clang sound of cups falling, and a thin man's voice sounded higher. Where did the bitch come from? He actually ran into the painting studio and knocked over my wine cup. The man just finished speaking, and then shouted, "How did you get into the painting studio and knock over my wine cup? You still want to run away from my things?" Heavy footsteps sounded, as if there was a tugging between the two. Soon the man was cursing, and a voice no lower than his sounded at the same time. "You are a bitch, your whole family is a bitch. This is not a prison. Others can come, but I can't. It doesn't matter if I knock over a few wine bottles. I'll just pay you. You are a dog looking down on others." The voice belonged to Duan Gilan. He was not on his own territory at this time, and he dared to be so arrogant when he sneaked out. Lily, who was hiding on the beam, sneered after hearing this. When the turtle slave serving the wine heard Duangilan scold him, the whole family is a bitch, and also scolded himself for looking down on others. Although the people who worked in the brothel were of low status and had a low status, this slave had practiced a pair of tricks for a long time. With his sharp eyes, he could see right away that Duangilan was obviously disguised as a man, even though her skin was slightly dark. She looks much older than she actually is, but the girl can't deceive others. Whether it's her voice or her pierced ears, she even wears clothes that don't look like a man's frame and chest that have just begun to develop. He doesn't look like a man anywhere. A woman slipped into the brothel. Naturally, it is impossible to come here to look for flowers and willows. Since he is not a benefactor, he is not here to spread money, and he is not dressed like someone who comes to sell himself in a painting studio, so the turtle slave is not polite at the moment. He put his hands on his hips and cursed. "You bitch, you sneaked into Huachanfang and you don't know what you're doing. At first glance, you look like a female haka. She's nondescript and pretends to be a man. You came to this place, are you in love with spring?" Duangilan herself is a master who is not afraid of anything. She was a little flustered when she was bumped into by the turtle slave, but now she heard the turtle slave scolding her like this. She was so angry that she slapped the turtle slave on the face without thinking. The turtle slave had no defense at all and fell to the ground with a thud sound. "You're blind. This girl can come to this place whenever she wants, and leave whenever she wants. If you dare to say that I miss spring, I'll beat you to death. Someone is coming. Someone is coming." Beat him to death. The turtle slave was knocked down. Suddenly he opened his mouth and shouted loudly. In order to prevent people from making trouble in the painting studio, a group of thugs were kept in the courtyard. At this time, he heard the turtle slave shouting loudly, and many footsteps were hurriedly running towards this direction. When they came over, even many girls who were sleeping with their doors locked began to get up. Many people were impatiently cursing, "Why are you yelling and screaming? Who dares to sneak into the studio and cause trouble?" Hearing the footsteps, Duangilan knew that she was in trouble no matter how stupid she was. She rolled her eyes and began to think of ways to escape. Although she is bold and has a bad temper. But Duangilan is not a fool. "I know my own business. If I want to hit a turtle slave who is serving others, I can slap him when he is not prepared, but if there are too many people on the other side." She definitely couldn't beat 2 or 3 strong men, and the thought of her own flesh and blood was enough. Duangilan immediately didn't care about hiding, got up and ran away. Today she entered this painting studio because of Shen Tenguin. At this time, Gilan also knew that if she wanted to protect herself, she must first find Shen Tenguin and get involved with him. Maybe he could see that the Shen family was about to, for the sake of getting married to the Duan family, do yourself a favor. Otherwise, if a quarrel breaks out, if he gets beaten here today, he will really suffer in vain. She panicked and wanted to run away. The turtle slave was slapped and it was just when she was getting angry. When he saw her about to run, he jumped up and grabbed her. She was wearing a man's robe. I don't know where it came from. The robe was extremely loose, and Duangilan was pulled by the turtle slave, unable to move at all. In desperation, she turned around and took advantage of the woman's petite figure to take off the loose men's robe she was wearing and stuck out her tongue at the turtle slave. "Take it if you want it." As soon as she finished speaking, she ran towards the middle of the studio wearing a lining. Lily was hiding on the beam and could clearly see that she was rushing from this direction, which was the direction where Shen Tenguin and others were staying. March in spring. Shen Tenguin was responding to the sister's request and reciting a poem for these girls. However, for some reason, the painting studio was quiet before, but soon it became noisy again. Let him have no peace. Originally, Writing a poem right away was a test of talent, but he just didn't want to lose in front of a woman. At this time, he was bracing himself to search for a book full of poems, but was disrupted by the sound of dong 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 footsteps. Even if Shen Tenguin lost his temper no matter how good it was, the brows were frowning at this time, and a rare angry look appeared on the gentle face. What happened? Slave, let's go and take a look. Before the girl who spoke could finish her words, she saw a man wearing a pair of women's embroidered shoes rushing towards her. Behind her, several people from the brothel were chasing her. Quickly, when she turned a corner and saw someone here, her eyes lit up and she rushed over. Stop here, you damn girl. You dare to come here and act wild. It's your life. A disheveled old woman put her hands on her hips and ordered angrily, take her for me. I tied him up and asked whose family it belonged to. It disturbed everyone's pleasure, and in just a moment, the slave family will be able to catch this bad guy. Bah! You are the ghost. You look at your age, but you have a bloody mouth. Ugly people often cause mischief. You have the nerve to call others ghosts. You are a ghost, and you are scarier than a ghost. Ha ha ha, here it is. At this point, Duan Gilan couldn't help but talk back. She saw several literati at this time. Although he didn't know who Shen Tenguin was, Duan Gilan knew instinctively that Shen Tenguin was probably among this group of people. Now she jumped into the studio and made a lot of noise and even beat someone. It would be difficult for her to escape on her own, so she would have to find someone to help her. Therefore, after Duan Gilan finished cursing and saw that the woman's face was turning blue with anger, she suddenly shouted, Shen Tenguin, save me. Her words stunned a group of scholars. Shen Tenguin's face turned red. The girl and I have never met. Okay, so you are Shen Tenguin. Duan Gilan's eyes lit up when he heard Shen Tenguin speak. He jumped towards him and grabbed his clothes. You have made a marriage agreement with my sister, and now you dare to come to the brothel. Look for flowers and ask willows. Thanks to my mother and the others, you were praised so highly that you are nothing but gold and jade. Now it seems that you are just a piece of gold and jade. A straw bag among the waste. Looking back, I will not tell my mother. I will see if she will praise you again in the future. When Shen Tenguin heard this, his face suddenly darkened. He was originally a scholar and had no strength to tie a chicken, but at this time, Duan Gilan staggered him in front of several of his brothers. He almost fell to the ground and finally managed to stabilize his body. But at this time, he could not worry about the damage to his face. Instead, his expression was a little ugly. You are? That's right. I'm from the Duan family, so let me tell you that you are dishonest. Otherwise, how could you not have married a wife at the age of 18, and now you are almost engaged and still come to visit a brothel? You are so shameless. If you hadn't been caught by me here, I'm afraid people still think you are such a good person. Duan Gilan was so proud that she pushed Shen Tenguin in front of her to block him. While cursing, you're really not a good person. It's a shame that my mother praises you so much that you're a scholar, and you're more like a dirty person. Her mouth is like a cannonball, and the words come out as soon as they come out. This made Shen Tenguin's face turn red and his whole body trembled. You. Are you the wife of the Duan family, sent to follow and monitor me? When Shen Tenguin heard Duan Gilan announcing her family status, she was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. At this moment, he couldn't care less that he was being pushed around by Duan Gilan, and the tug and pull between men and women was inappropriate. Just thinking that Duan Gilan might be sent by Lily to follow and monitor him, Shen Tenguin started to tremble all over. After all, if this girl is telling lies, you will know if you ask later. If it were someone else, they might not know that she left the house and went to the art studio today. Someone must be guarding near his house and following his every move. He is going out today. As soon as he said these words, Duan Gilan, who was proud at first, suddenly felt guilty. Of course, Lily couldn't have sent her here to monitor and follow Shen Tenguin. In fact, she was not convinced that Mr. Lu had been praising Lily for finding a son-in-law who could take a long time, so she wanted to find out Shen Tenguin's shortcomings so that she could return to Mr. Lu. Just refute her when she mentions this again. Duan Gilan couldn't see Lily marrying such an outstanding husband, and didn't like hearing Lu always say that she would rely on Lily for support in the future, so she just wanted to find out Shen Tenguin's mistakes so that she could vent her anger. But how can I say this easily at this time? She stammered and shouted again. So what? At this moment, it was naturally impossible for her to admit that it was all her own fault that she came here. Since Shen Tenguin had misunderstood, it didn't count as her talking nonsense. What's more, so what if she admitted it? Even if Lily knew about it in the future, he was thinking about her. If he hadn't followed him in advance, how would he have known that Shen Tenguin would come to such an unclean place? If she hadn't been following Shen Tenguin, Lily would have watched her husband look for flowers when she got married, so her younger sister would have helped her. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1084. Thinking of this, the trace of guilt in Duan Gilan's heart suddenly disappeared, and she opened her mouth and cursed, "Fortunately I'm here, otherwise I wouldn't know the dirty tricks you are hiding in your heart. Shameless, shameless stinking," and he said he was a scholar. Shen Tenguin was so angry that his face turned blue and white. After confirming his guess and confirming from Duan Gilan that she was sent by Lily to monitor him, Shen Tenguin began to struggle desperately. He just said, "Why did the eldest lady in that family not tell anyone about her even at such a young age? Thanks to her mother and aunt, she always praised her for being gentle, virtuous, and quiet. Now it seems that it is all a lie. This poisonous woman, this jealous woman, this is simply unreasonable." Before the horoscopes were matched and the betrothal gift was given, he began to worry about where he was going. If he brought such a woman home in the future, wouldn't he have to keep her on his head at all times? Shen Tenguin felt endless anger in his heart at this moment, but Duan Gilan held on to him in order to escape. He struggled hard, but it did not help except making himself look even more embarrassed. The two were twisted into a ball. Seeing this scene, several scholars around them opened their folding fans to cover their faces, shook their heads and sighed. There is no clear understanding between men and women, and tugging in broad daylight is so inappropriate. But how could Duan Gilan listen to this at this moment? The people in Huachanfang were staring at her. If she let go of Shen Tenguin, I'm afraid she would be caught and beaten in the end. When someone else spoke, she turned around and scolded her, "What does it have to do with you? Dogs are meddling in other people's business. You shameless people came to a brothel to hang out, and you don't care whether I have sex with others," she finished. Then he grabbed Shen Tenguin and said, "Come on, come with me and go back to Duan's house to reason." Let go, Shen Tenguin made such a fool of himself in front of his classmates today. She hated Lily so much that she bled. This is unreasonable. Who dares to leave? No one dares to leave. While the two were fighting, all the wine glasses on the table fell to the ground and smashed to pieces. Amidst the sound of clang, the faces of the girls who were originally accompanying the wine were pale. Fearing that they would be implicated, they all screamed and hid aside. Seeing this scene, his face became even more ugly, and he shouted sternly, "Pull these two people apart." At this time, it was naturally time for Lily to appear. The trouble Duan Gilan caused today would at best ruin her reputation. Although she made a big fuss in Huachanfang. But in the end, not many things were broken, and the police eventually came to the door, and Mrs. Lu paid a sum of money to calm her down. In the end, it was not painful for the Duan family. Duan Behi and Mrs. Lu originally earned their fortune by getting up early and working in the dark, but because of Duan Gilan's trouble, Mrs. Lu was afraid that her youngest daughter's reputation would be ruined and she would not be able to get married, and Duan Gilan herself was not very good looking. Such a big disaster happened again, and she saw that she had no future. Therefore, when Shen Zioki came to propose marriage, Mrs. Lu was so happy that she naturally could not care about anything else. At that time, for the sake of her little daughter, she had long forgotten what she had said that day. The bowl of water is flat, and if the dowry is divided equally between the two sisters, they will sell all of Duan's cloth shop and give it to Duan Gilan as a dowry. It was with the money from selling Duan's cloth shop that Shen Tenguin was able to study with peace of mind. In the end, he used the money to find an official position as a county magistrate. Mrs. Lu originally thought that her eldest daughter would have no dowry. But with her docile temperament and good looks, she was still able to get married in the end, but she didn't expect that Duan Behi ended up getting married to fill a house. At this time, Behi naturally cannot let the old things in the plot happen again. Duan's cloth village has Duan Behi's hard work. And this time it was her fault again, and Mrs. Lu should not ignore her interests. So he sold the entire cloth village to his youngest daughter as a dowry. Since Duan Behi couldn't get it, it should be fair, as Lu said, and no one should get it. Lily doesn't care whether Shen Tenguin likes Duan Gilan or not this time, but even if these two are Lang Yu's love sisters and end up liking each other intentionally, Lily can't let them go as smoothly as in the plot. She can't get the money, so Duan Gilan shouldn't think about getting any benefits to subsidize Shen Tenguin and become a ready-made official wife in the future. Since Duan Gilan had stirred up the dripping water herself, he would stir it up even more for her. She had poured the sewage splashed by Shen Tenguin onto her body before, but now she was going to put a shit basin on her head and let her eat it. It's a shame for me to be dumb, I have no place to complain if I have my grievances. When she thought of this, Lily suddenly jumped down from the beam. At this time, the studio was in chaos. Screams and curses sounded at the same time. The chaos was so disturbing that Lily suddenly jumped up and kicked her. Go over and shout loudly. Second Lady Duan, run away quickly. I'll take your money and I'll take care of things for you. Don't worry, I'll block it for you. Lily deliberately lowered her voice and shouted. She used her spiritual power to suppress it when she spoke. Her voice sounded a little hoarse, and she couldn't tell the difference between men and women for a moment. The woman only heard Lily shouting, and then she was kicked in the lower back and screamed. With a roar, his body flew straight forward, hitting the railing on the side of the studio with a bang, and landed awkwardly. The railing was extremely exquisite, and the quality was not bad, but Lily's kick was extremely powerful, and with the weight of another person, her body hit the railing, and there was only a click sound, although her body fell. The ground, but the railing broke. She ignored the pain in her back vest and raised her head to look. The gauze originally hung on the railing was broken, and the gauze fell down under the shock. This time it was not just a few wine cups. The loss was comparable. She screamed and shouted feebly. Catch them. They're in a group. Several thugs from Hua Chunfang surrounded Lily and Duan Gilan. Duan Gilan himself was confused. He didn't know when an accomplice came, but it would be perfect if someone came to break up with him at this time. She pulled Shen Tenguin to dodge left and right. It wasn't that she was relying on Shen Tenguin, but Duan Gilan himself knew that now that the trouble had reached such a point, Mrs. Lu might not be able to spare her if she turned around. Although she usually got into a lot of trouble, this time it was too much. At this time, she had no choice but to catch Shen Tenguin and drag him to Mrs. Lu, so that Mrs. Lu could see his true face. Maybe he could escape this time, otherwise Mrs. Lu might really go crazy. For this reason, she grabbed Shen Tenguin's hand and didn't let go. On the other hand, Shen Tenguin was an 18-year-old student who had never even touched his daughter's hands. Now he was tugging and tugging with her, but he couldn't let go. He was anxious and a little shy, so he turned around to look. Duengilin felt that although this girl was reckless, at least she was loyal and did not throw him away and run away. He completely forgot that he was drinking and chatting in the painting studio in a good manner. Duengilin was the one who ended up in this situation. I don't know if it's because she has an extremely bad impression of Duengilin, or because she was so loyal that she came to do things for her sister, but she didn't hear a few complaints from her. She was kind and friendly, and now Shen Tenguin is angry with Duengilin. While interacting with each other, I couldn't help but feel a bit of appreciation. As soon as Lily appeared, she didn't hold back anymore. The thugs in the studio had only practiced a few superficial kung fu at most. She quickly knocked several thugs to the ground with 3 punches and 2 kicks. Anyway, these losses * the police will demand compensation from Mrs. Liu. She controlled her subordinates and did not beat anyone to any harm, but in the end, she dragged these people and almost destroyed the inside of the studio. The screams of a group of girls woke up many patrons who had stayed overnight last night. When they saw something happened in the studio, they all hurriedly hid. Huddled in the corner, trembling with fear and anger, gritting her teeth and chanting, "Second Madame Duen, what a wonderful Duen family." Everyone was dealing with Lily. Taking advantage of the chaos, Duengilin saw that no one was paying attention to her, so she hurriedly grabbed Shen Tenguin and ran away. "You don't care about her anymore." Shen Tenguin was so frightened that he was panting. He had followed the rules in his life and had never done anything so outrageous. At this time, his heart was still beating, but it was a little exciting. Duengilin shrank her head when she heard this. She didn't know who the people who were with her just now were, but now she didn't dare to let her go back to the studio. When she heard Shen Tenguin's words, she stared. Shen Tenguin glanced at it and cursed in his heart. He is really a nerd. Reading makes people stupid. Now 1 or 2 people can't protect themselves. They still want to care about others, regardless of whether they have the ability. If she hadn't made too much noise today, she might have been punished by Mrs. Liu if she went back alone like this. Thinking about dragging Shen Tenguin, Mrs. Liu might just give her a few scoldings at the end, otherwise she would have run away long ago without seeing the just now. Like cannibalism. Duengilin felt impatient, and saw Shen Tenguin looking back from time to time, gave him a tug, and said vaguely, "You care so much. I've never seen him be so good at fighting. Others can't hurt him. If he wants to run away, there must be other ways. But if we are caught, it will be over." After she finished speaking, she quickly stepped on the seesaw to get off the boat. Shen Tenguin was dizzy and let her pull her away. In the studio, Lily saw that she was about to leave, so she no longer held back. She threw away the people who gathered around her, and no one dared to touch her again. Lily stamped her feet, and there was a click sound. Everyone's backs went numb, and she quickly stamped a crack in the bottom of the boat. Everyone was trembling with fear when they saw this person with disheveled hair, whose face could not be seen clearly, and it was not clear whether he was a man or a woman, stamped his feet, and the boat spread further and further apart, almost splitting in half. The lantern hanging outside the edge of the boat shook violently, and everyone ran around in the sound of the woman's scream. As a result, the hull itself was attacked by Lily's spiritual power, and coupled with the strength of everyone's escape, it dispersed faster. Almost in the blink of an eye, the boat suddenly broke in half. Amidst the screams of a group of people, many girls fell into the water like dumplings. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 1085. Duengilin and Shen Tenguin had just stepped on the seesaw. When the boat was destroyed, they could no longer maintain their balance. It was too late to get ashore. The two looked at each other in panic. Screaming, holding hands and falling into the water with a plop. "Here comes, help," screams, begging for mercy, and calls for help came and went. Before the boat completely sank into the water, Lily flew up as light as a bird, with her toes on the boat. After a few ups and downs, he disappeared. At this moment, Duan Gilan and Shen Tenguin, who fell into the water, were still holding hands, treating each other as life-saving straws. At this time, the Huihe River was very noisy, because the destruction of Hua Chunfang and the falling into the water of the prostitutes caused many people to watch and stare. Duan Gilan was a little panicked when she started to fall into the water, but she quickly calmed down. She has always liked hanging out since she was a child. She has never done anything that ordinary girls do, but there are things that ordinary girls have never done. But she has done most of them. When she was a child, she watched boys secretly swim in the water. Although she grew up and no longer did such outrageous things, she could do simple swimming. Once she calmed down, after swallowing a few mouthfuls of water, she holding back his breath, he swung his legs and kicked up as hard as he could. Shen Tenguin was different from her. Shen Tenguin had only known reading since he was a child. Apart from that, he didn't know how to swim and hold his breath at all. He quickly drank several mouthfuls of water and his consciousness gradually disappeared. Duan Gilan wanted to run away by herself at first, but when she came to her senses, she remembered that Shen Tenguin was still in his hands. The trouble she had caused this time was too great. If something happened to Shen Tenguin, it would be fine if Lily couldn't get married by then. She herself was also affected and had to stay in her parents' home for the rest of her life and be criticized by others. In addition, Shen Tenguin was holding her tightly, and she couldn't struggle at all. If she had to watch him fall into the water without saving him, she would not be so bad. Think of this. Duan Gilan cursed in his heart, but hugged Shen Tenguin with his backhand and kicked him towards the river with all his strength. Although Duan Gilan usually has a carefree personality and is not like an ordinary little girl, she is a girl's family after all. At this moment, she was hugging and wet with a strange man, and her outer clothes were torn off by the turtle man. She could not help but feel a little ashamed at this moment. Fortunately, the two of them were not far from the river. Although she was traveling alone, Duan Gilan had much better physical strength than ordinary girls, so she quickly swam to the river with Shen Tenguin, climbed up to the shore, and quickly dragged her along. The unconscious Shen Tenguin ran away. The Huihe River was in chaos at this time. After seeing what happened, many people who were watching the excitement by the river jumped into the water to save people. There were also many who climbed ashore on their own. Duan Gilan's actions were not eye-catching. She usually wandered around Huaicheng when she had nothing to do. She was very familiar with many places in Huaicheng. After landing, she took Shen Tenguin, who was about to die, unprepared and found a deserted back alley. Then she took him flattened. She spit out the water herself. Then seeing Shen Tenguin lying on the ground with a pale face like a dead person, silent, as if he had lost consciousness, Duan Gilan only started to feel a little scared until now. It's one thing for her to be fooling around, but she has never caused any harm to anyone, so she reached out to pat Shen Tenguin's cheek and shouted in a panic, "Hey, are you okay? Don't die, Weavua. If Shen Tenguin dies, it will be her fault. Mrs. Lu will definitely not be able to spare her if she looks back." Thinking back to when Lily had a blind date with someone named He. Mrs. Lu has missed her for so many years since she made such a fuss. If she kills Shen Tenguin this time, and if Lily can't get married again, Mrs. Lu will definitely miss her for the rest of her life. What's more, hurting someone and killing them are two different things, Duan Gilan shouted. I wiped my tears and started crying. There was no one behind the alley. She cried for a while, and no one came to comfort her. In the autumn, she was wearing wet clothes, and her hair was soaked. She didn't feel it when she was nervous just now. When she calmed down, she started to feel a little cold. There was nothing around her. The others were horribly deserted. No matter how bold Duan Gilan was, she was just a 15-year-old girl. She originally disliked Shen Tenguin, but now that he was the only one around, she couldn't help but be attracted to Shen Tenguin. It gives rise to a somewhat different feeling. What's more, she got into trouble, and there was an insider beside her. Duan Gilan couldn't describe the indescribable feeling, so she just pressed closer to him. She saw that Shen Tenguin had his eyes closed tightly, his hair and clothes were all wet, and that Sven's face was so white that he turned blue at this time. Duan Gilan cried for a while and then stopped, reaching out to touch his face. I didn't expect that he was not so ugly. She bit her lip and saw that Shen Tenguin didn't move. He looked a little shy at first, but later he became more courageous, so he simply lay half on top of him and observed him carefully. Humph! His skin is actually whiter than mine. He really doesn't look like a man. She brought her hand to Shen Tenguin's face to compare it. After discovering that her hand was much darker than his face, she became a little angry. Going to twist his face, she was so immersed in her actions that she didn't realize that Shen Tenguin's eyelashes began to tremble. The place where he fell into the water was not deep. Although Shen Tenguin drank some water and fainted at first, he got up quickly because he was rescued. In addition, when Duan Gilan took him around, he vomited some water in his stomach because of the position she led him to. When he came out, he was actually a little sober when he was in the alley. He just felt that the situation between the two of them was too embarrassing and he didn't dare to open his eyes. He didn't expect that Duan Gilan would touch his face without saying anything, and still get so close to him. Shen Tenguin lived until he was 18 years old. Except for going to romantic places, he had never spoken to or been so close to a girl from a good family. The girl's soft skin and orchid breath blew against his cheek, making his heart itch. He suppressed the throbbing in his heart and did not dare to say anything, for fear of scaring Duan Gilan, and both of them would feel embarrassed. Unexpectedly, Duan Gilan would say that his skin was whiter than hers and he didn't look like a man. Shen Tenguin felt both angry and a little funny for a moment. He pursed his lips tightly and still closed his eyes. Growing up, my mother has always favored my sister in everything. My sister is prettier, fairer, and more obedient than me. My mother likes her the most. Last time she saw me being beaten by my sister, she didn't help me. This time my sister has a husband like you, and she told me to please my sister in the future. Shen Tenguin started to pretend to be unconscious, just to avoid being embarrassed when they woke up, but Duan Gilan touched him for a while and started to say, speaking from her heart, she said how painful it was for her to have an excellent sister since she was a child. She said that her mother Lu was partial and chose an excellent husband for her sister, but said that she might not be able to marry in the future. Shen Tenguin originally thought that Duan Gilan's character such nonsense is indeed a bit unreasonable, but after hearing the girl's inner monologue at this time, she felt a little sympathetic to her. Thinking of that time, the lady had already sent people to monitor and follow him before she made an engagement with him. He originally thought that there must be something wrong with Behi Shaiki not getting married. When he was in the painting studio, he heard Duan Gilan admit that she was following him. Having been instigated by Lily, he had already concluded that Lily was evil-minded. At this time, hearing Duan Gilan talk about her thoughts, she felt that her suspicions were confirmed. Although this little girl acted recklessly, her temper was innocent. Her sister used her to do such evil things, but she foolishly agreed for the sake of sisterly love. What kind of dirty place is Huachanfang? Doesn't that lady know? Who among the serious girls would go there? If the incident is exposed, Duan Gilan's reputation will be ruined for the rest of her life. This lady is indeed evil-minded, and this little girl is really stupid. What is hateful is Mrs. Lu. She has 2 daughters, but she treats her eldest daughter as a treasure. Such an obedient and sensible good woman does not know how to cherish it. She does not care about her eldest daughter's mischief. It is too much. Damn it. At first, Shen Tenguin hadn't thought of this in his mind, but now he felt more pity for Duan Gilan when he heard Duan Gilan talking about the past at home. He even began to feel that Duan Gilan's flamboyant appearance concealed a pure and simple heart. Her appearance may not be as good looking as Mrs. Duan, but the pink skull, he is not a person who values appearances. Such a heart is far more beautiful than Mrs. Duan. Mrs. Duan's skinny appearance is much more beautiful. He resisted the urge to hold the little girl in his arms and coax her. Sometimes once a man starts to feel pity for a girl, that's the beginning of falling in love. Duan Gilan doesn't know this. She usually has nothing. Close friends and girls of the same age treat her as an alien and do not play with her. At home, Mrs. Lu only knows to tell her to be good and not to cause trouble when she goes out, not to mention her sister Lily, who is 3 years older than her. The two sisters are so distant now that she has no place to talk. At this time, she feels that Shen Tenguin is still unconscious, so she just I told him vigorously. After saying it, I felt much better. I felt that all the resentment in my heart had been vented. I treated Shen Tenguin like an emotional trash can and finished complaining, and then I straightened up. Okay, I feel much better now. I usually don't know who to talk to. As soon as she finished speaking, Shen Tenguin couldn't help but feel even more pity in his heart. He resisted the urge to wake up and comfort her, and then heard Duan Gilan poke her with her finger. His cheeks. You are not allowed to tell others, he, but you are not afraid if you tell me. No one will know anyway. Well, I approve of your brother-in-law. Please help me more in the future. When my sister bullies me, you have to beat her up for me. You also have to help me make the decision about my marriage in the future. I will be admitted to the Juran examination and become an official as soon as possible. After she finished talking happily, Shen Tenguin only felt that she was cheerful and lively, and she was very interested in her. Her impression was inevitably better, and the next moment Duan Gilan muttered again, forget it, my mother said that I may not be able to get married. Anyway, if I can't get married, you will get rich in the future. You are my brother-in-law and you have to support me. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1086. After she finished speaking, she looked at the time and it was almost time. The two of them were still wearing wet clothes. It was not an option to continue like this. She dragged Shen Tenguin up, and Shen Tenguin leaned against her. She only felt that this petite figure was so pitiful. At this moment, she has not thought about leaving him behind, which is enough to prove how kind she is in her heart. He saw Duan Gilan dragging him with great difficulty. At this time, he could not bear to let her carry him again. He coughed twice, pretending to be awake. Duan Gilan pushed him away as if she was electrocuted. Shen Tenguin was pushed to the ground with a bang, making him dizzy. If she did this in the art studio, Shen Tenguin would probably become angry from embarrassment, but now that he felt that she was not so annoying, he no longer disliked her as before. Instead, he had a much better impression of her, which made him feel helpless. He glanced at Duan Gilan and breathed a sigh of relief. You. Duan Gilan pointed at him and said the word you several times in a row. After a long while, she stamped her feet. When did you wake up? She remembered that she had been unconscious before. He was talking about the monologue that he had said. At this time, I felt ashamed and not very sweet. It was as if he knew the privacy of his daughter's family. A blush rose from her slightly dark cheeks, and her eyes seemed to be filled with tears. Spring water dripped out. Why didn't you tell me when you woke up? Seeing her angry expression, like an angry cat showing its claws, Shen Tenguin was a little amused, but he was considerate enough not to expose her. I just woke up, girl, you. When Duan Gilan woke up after hearing him, she felt relieved for some reason. But she felt a little lost for no reason. She puffed up her cheeks and said after a long while, "Now that you're awake, get up quickly. It's getting cold. If you're going to catch a cold and die, it's none of my business. You've taught me a lesson, girl." Duan Gielin's tone of voice was originally not very pleasant, but if it had been anyone else, she would have heard her say die or not. She would probably think that the bad luck had already turned against her, and even if Mrs. Lu heard her say this, she would give her a lesson. Unexpectedly, this man had a good temper. Not only was he not angry, but he said that she had taught her a lesson in a gentle manner. Duan Gielin felt a little sweet in her heart, but she also thought that this was the man Lu had set for Lily, not her own. My heart suddenly became discouraged, and my little face fell down. Ever since she was a child, she has always been inferior to Lily in the eyes of others. Now that such a man is knowledgeable, promising, and has a good temper, Mrs. Lu only talks about it to Lily and not to herself. Duan Gielin initially came to find Shen Teng to argue with. Duan Gielin originally felt a little gloating when she found out that he went to the brothel, but now that she found out that Shen Tenguin had a gentle temper and good looks, she felt a little jealous that such a man belonged to Lily. Tears welled up in her eyes, she suppressed the sourness in her heart, turned around and ran away. Shen Tenguin didn't know what he had done wrong. When he saw her running away and chasing after her, he quickly apologized. Coaxing and talking. The more Duan Gielin saw him like this, the more disgusted she felt, and she ran away crying wow. He made her cry without doing anything. Shen Tenguin also felt a little anxious and wanted to chase she again. Duan Gielin had already run away and disappeared. At this time, after destroying Hua Chunfang, the other Lily returned to the Duan family's yard in a few ups and downs. She went out for a trip and came back without anyone noticing. She changed her clothes and arranged her hair. She tore the clothes she changed into to pieces with her inner strength and took them to the stove to burn them. When she came out, Ms. Lu was gloomy. Sitting at the counter with a sullen face, although he didn't want to talk to the eldest daughter, he couldn't help it at this time. He reached out and patted the counter heavily, raised the wooden ruler at hand, and shouted sternly. "You still know how to come out? Where did you go? It's been more than 2/4 of an hour since Lily left." During this long time, several customers came to Duan's shop, but Ms. Lu was unable to greet her because of her poor legs and feet. Therefore, she didn't do any business in the past half day. Ms. Lu, there was a fire in my heart. When I saw Lily coming back, I vented to her, "1 or 2 people use this place as an inn. They can come when they want and leave when they want. Get over here. I'm calling today, I won't kill you." She cursed angrily, as if she wanted to vent all the anger she had been holding in her heart for the past few days. Lily stared at her in a funny way. Ms. Lu thought that she was still the same obedient and gentle person when she was 12 or 13 years old. The original owner who let her beat and scold her? Still want to hit myself. She had thought about repairing the mother-daughter relationship with Ms. Lu before, but after Ms. Lu repeatedly favored her, Lily no longer had this plan. She was not the original owner. Whether Lu was angry or happy, it had nothing to do with her. She wanted to get maternal love for the original owner to increase the success of the task, but Lu was still so partial, and she had no choice. "Why are you so girly? I just have a stomachache. I just want to go back to the back room and go to the bathroom. Everyone has 3 urgent needs. Is it okay for Gielin to run around all day long? I have to beat her up even if I go to the bathroom." Lily, she sneered in her heart, but there was a look of grievance on her face. She didn't expect that she would say this. She was stunned for a moment. If Behi really went to the toilet, her anger would indeed be too inexplicable, but she had always been with her eldest daughter. She was used to being fierce in front of her, and she couldn't keep her face down if she was asked to lower her head, so she snorted. "It takes so long to go to the toilet. You're lazy and you poop a lot. I haven't seen you do much in a day. You just eat and drink, but it takes so long to go to the toilet. Lily listened to her scolding and kept saying, she was impatient and frowned, Mom, I'd better tell Gillen what I'm saying. In terms of laziness, who is as lazy as her? She doesn't do anything all day long, and she eats much more than me. Lily with one sentence, Mrs. Lou was blocked back, making Mrs. Lou tremble with anger, but she didn't even say a word to refute Lily's words. Seeing that Behi had finished blocking her, she turned around and sat down on the other side. Ms. Lou only felt a pain in her heart, and she was so angry that she was dizzy. The mother and daughter in Duan's cloth shop were speechless, but on the other side of the Huachanfang, the sisters and the mother-in-law and others were rescued one after another. The mother-in-law was very angry at this moment, and the cost of building a painting workshop was not cheap. But now the film of that girl named Duan was ruined. Although the man in ragged clothes didn't know who he was, he and the dead girl named Duan were in the same group. Now that the police had identified the person, they naturally wanted to blame all losses on Duan Gillen. Wait until everyone is rescued. Before everyone could calm down, he angrily led people towards Duan's Buzzwang to start trouble. Ms. Lou still didn't know that Duan Gillen had caused a big trouble. She always felt that her eyelids were twitching, and she didn't know why. Mrs. Lou felt upset and restless today. In the past, when Duan Gillen got into trouble, she would occasionally feel this way, but it had never been as serious as today. Although Ms. Lou was still angry with Lily, she was really panicked at the moment. She endured it again and again, but finally couldn't hold it in anymore, so she opened her mouth and asked. Do you know where Gillen went? She felt something was wrong. Something big must have happened. At this moment, cold sweat was dripping down his forehead, but he couldn't say anything. When Lily heard Mrs. Liu's question, she saw that Mrs. Liu's face looked a bit off, and frowned. It's not like Gillen's character is unknown to her. She always likes to run out all day long, and she can't control her. I follow her. The relationship between her has always been unfamiliar. How could she tell me where she went? When she said this, Ms. Lou understood that this was true, but at this moment she felt very panicked, so she waved her hand feebly. Go find her quickly and come back. I'm very panicked. I'm afraid she's going to cause some trouble. Gillen has not been at home these past 2 days. She disappeared early in the morning. Where can I find her now? Lily sneered in her heart when she heard Liu's words. Only then did I worry that Duan Gillen would get into trouble. It's too late. After all her troubles, Mrs. Liu was definitely unlucky now. She would rather Mr. Liu had nothing, and could no longer stay here with partiality. In the future, I will find a way to provide for her in her old age and fulfill her filial piety for her original owner. Nor was he willing to let Mr. Liu have any more money to subsidize Duan Gillen. Lily's eyelids drooped to block the coldness in her eyes. What's more, I think Gillen should be measured at least, no matter how crazy she is. As a girl, what kind of trouble can she get into? Go as soon as I tell you. There's so much nonsense. When Ms. Liu heard what Lily said, she felt even more flustered. She shouted in anger and slapped the table hard with her hand. Hurry up and go find it. If you can't find it, don't come back. Where can I find it now? Huaicheng is so big. If my mother had bound Gillen's feet, she wouldn't be able to run as fast as she is now. Lily stood up and put the needle and thread in her hand into the cabinet. At this moment, the people from Huachanfang finally arrived. It's right here. Hearing the familiar shouting voice of the woman, and the sound of footsteps of a group of people, Mr. Liu's face turned dark. This feeling happens several times every year, and every time it is Duan Gillen who causes trouble, but she usually comes back after causing trouble. Today, I don't know where she went, and she hasn't returned home yet. A group of people rushed into the store fiercely, led by a woman with wet hair who entered the store and yelled. What about that bitch? Although she knew that Duan Gilan was most likely to be the cause of such a situation, when Ms. Lu heard someone scolding her daughter in this way, she instinctively felt protective of her daughter, and she couldn't help but stand up and reply, "Who are you? You're looking for the wrong place, get out and don't make trouble in my place." Humph! The woman raised her eyebrows, with a ruthless look in her eyes. "I came here today just to bring bad luck to you. Mrs. Duan is so proud that she dared to destroy all my coffins. Today, I won't let you Duan family bring me back skin and bones. My business of selling flesh and blood for more than 10 years has been in vain." The woman was indeed very angry. She also made money by selling her body when she was young. "After working hard for more than 10 years, my appearance has faded. I saved some money and opened a Huachun Fang. Now the business has improved a little. I see that I will rely on this for the rest of my life." However, Duan Gilan made trouble and he brought out some inexplicable accomplice and ruined everything. Thinking that in this life she has no man, no children, and the only painting center is gone, the woman wants to chew Duan Gilan to death. She stood in the store and cursed loudly. The obscene words made Mrs. Liu's face turn red. Although Mrs. Liu was usually a tough boss, and had the same temper when it came to quarreling, but at this time, compared with this angry woman, she was still a little worse. These people don't know what to say, they are shameless, and they speak straight words that make Mrs. Liu's head smoke. As more and more people came around to watch, Mrs. Liu felt the veins on her forehead pulsing, and she felt like the world was spinning, and she wanted to get up. But the foot injury was not completely healed. It hurt so much when she moved. As soon as she stood up, she sat down again. This shameless little slut wants a man so much that he wants to spread his legs and let that man penetrate him. Before he was 15, he came to a brothel before his hair even grew. I have done a lot of business in my life. He also has a lot of experience. He has bought countless women, and some of them are crying and fighting to death and refuse to enter this place. This is the first time to see a daughter of a good family come to a brothel without any money. It is really rare. When they saw the turtle slaves in the courtyard, they all took off their clothes and put on their underwear to wander around the brothel. Tisk, 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 but it's a pity that the appearance is a bit worse, neither tender skin nor tender meat, not national. She's so beautiful. She looks like she's been rubbed with mud. I wouldn't want such a thing in my painting spring shop, even if she took the initiative to put it up. The woman was so angry that she couldn't say a word. Just one word of scolding made Mrs. Liu's face turn green and red and purple. Lily sneered and hid in the corner watching the commotion, seeing that Mrs. Liu was scolded because of Duan Gilan and couldn't even speak. This is the daughter Liu has always doted on. After causing trouble, he didn't dare to go home. He hid outside and put all the consequences on Liu. You're talking nonsense. Ms. Liu used to be eloquent, but now she couldn't hold her head up and turned red after being talked about by this. The only thing that went back and forth was that she was talking nonsense. More and more people were watching the excitement around, and the woman sneered, "Fake things can't be true. True things can't be false. So many people have seen Duan Niang's body today, and I alone can't say it. There are too many someone saw it. Now I don't want to tell you so much. My painting studio has been completely destroyed by your dead girl, and now it's too late to salvage it. I have to pay for the money. If I can't pay it off, I'll use your cloth shop to pay for it." After she finished speaking, she turned to look at Lily again, her eyes brightening. "Humph, if I can't afford to pay, there is still a big girl like you, who is as beautiful as a flower. The younger one is too ugly for me to despise, but you, this eldest girl in our family, is not bad looking, she is still a housekeeper. Before she could finish her words, Lily stared at her coldly. That woman was considered a shrewd person and had experienced many things, so she instinctively felt that something was not right. It felt right. When Lily looked at her, she felt numb in her back for some reason. The eldest lady of the Dewan family looked pretty, but the way she looked at people was really scary. She shut up. She originally wanted to say that the Dewan family couldn't pay back the money, so they captured Lily and went to a brothel to pay off the debt. They sold her for 2 or 3 years and maybe they could make some money back. But at this moment, Lily's eyes made her feel cold. The woman's lips moved and she turned her face away. There is no basis for what you say. You cannot admit that the nonsense you are talking about is true. My daughter is not at home today about this matter. I also said that you kidnapped and trafficked a girl from a good family and hid her somewhere. I want to file a lawsuit. Ms. Lu was so scolded by this that her blood rushed to the top of her head. A cold feeling rose from the solace of her feet and then rushed to her body, limbs, and bones. Ms. Liu's body began to tremble uncontrollably. It was so unpleasant. The words and the scenes of people around pointing and watching the excitement made Liu's ears buzz. She originally refused to believe that her little daughter had caused such a catastrophic disaster, but for some reason, she had a bad feeling in her heart that what she said might be true. It's okay for Dewan Gilan to behave recklessly on weekdays. If it were like what this woman said, an unmarried girl ran into someone else's prostitute's boat and had her body looked at, her life would be ruined. The first thing Lu thought of was that her little daughter was now 15. She was not too young. She had a bad reputation and a very unruly personality. Very few husband-in-laws could easily tolerate her personality. She is docile and not very handsome, so she is not easy to marry. After getting into trouble, not only was she herself ignored, but even her eldest daughter was implicated by her. Now she is 17, and she finally managed to talk to her husband's family. Thinking of this, Ms. Lu was shocked. She recalled the scene more than a year ago when the He family was planning to come to the house in advance. At that time, Dewan Gilan was also acting like now. As a result, Lily's marriage was disrupted and the relationship between the two sisters became estranged. Now that the eldest daughter has finally managed to keep the clouds clear and see the moonlight, she is about to get married to the Shen family and has a good marriage. If Dewan Gilan continues to make trouble like this, I am afraid the Shen family will also be disobedient. This damn girl. Ms. Shen was so anxious that she almost cried. If Lily was disturbed like this again, no matter how good she was, it would be difficult for her to remarry in the future. She didn't know what sin she had committed. The more she thought about it, the more she felt chilly all over. The urge to cry came to her heart more and more, but on the surface, Ms. Lu also knew that she could never admit it. Now that so many neighbors are watching, if she recognizes her, her two daughters' lives will be ruined. Therefore, no matter how harshly the woman who calls herself Hua Chunfang scolds her, Ms. Lu will insist on refusing to admit it. He also started acting up on the grounds that his little daughter was missing and might be being harbored by this gangster. At first, Ms. Lu just said it casually for Dewan Gilan's reputation, but the more she said it, the more something was wrong. My daughter, I know her character very well in my heart. Although Gilan usually likes to get into trouble, her character has never been to hide and dare not see people when she gets into trouble. Now she has been out for such a long time without being seen. Maybe it was you, a sinless old bitch, who hid her from me. When Ms. Lu said this, she suddenly burst into tears. What did you do to my daughter? I am a widowed woman. If something happens to my daughter, I will not be alive. You pay for my daughter's life today, otherwise none of you will ever leave Dewan's cloth village. Although Dewan Gilan loves to cause trouble on weekdays, in Ms. Liu's heart, her daughter is naturally good in everything. She felt that although Duan-Gielin's character was reckless, the only good thing was that Duan-Gielin was pure and upright. After getting into trouble, he always took responsibility for it. Even if he messed up Lily's marriage, Duan-Gielin would never do such a big thing. He didn't escape, but now he hasn't returned to the house for such a long time, which shows that he was most likely killed. The more Ms. Lu thought about it, the more she felt that this was very possible, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt a little scared. No wonder her eyelids had been twitching all morning. At that time, she was worried that Duan-Gielin was causing trouble, but now it seems that it is most likely that Duan-Gielin has caused trouble outside. Thinking of this, Ms. Liu's face showed a ferocious look. She even jumped up from her seat, pointed at her chest and started shouting, "If anything happens to my daughter, I will fight with you. She will be harmed. My daughter still dares to break into my shop, you damn bitches." I didn't expect Madame Lu to be even more vicious than her at this time. Others would have been frightened by Madame Liu's ferocious look, as if she was going crazy, but what that did on weekdays was the business of welcoming and delivering goods. Met many different kinds of people, but Liu's battles could not scare her. After being stunned for a while, she came back to her senses and sneered. "Really, the thief is shouting to catch the thief. The old shameless thing raised a shameless little one. He destroyed my painting workshop and he dared to say that I abducted your daughter. Don't take a piss and look at your daughter. He has such a good character, he looks like a dumpling from the early days of the land. He has a flat face with an open nose, eyes like mung beans, a mouth turned upward, and a nose like a garlic. If you pay me money for something like this, I'm afraid it will ruin my love life. The shop's signboard, 'You ugly girl,' can put it anywhere without fear of losing it, and even the blind man may not be able to touch her thick-skinned old flesh." The beatings made Ms. Lu furious, and she endured the excruciating pain in her feet to scratch her. It's just that Ms. Liu's leg fell hard before and the bones were out of place. Now she got excited and it was okay to sit still. However, when she exerted force, she felt a heartbreaking pain. Ms. Lu was furious, pointed at Lily and shouted, "Drive these gangsters to the Yamen and ask the old man to make the decision for our Gilin." Ms. Lu thought that her little daughter was good at everything and should be measured even if she got into trouble. However, Lily was one of the insiders and understood that Duan-Gielan had indeed gone to his painting studio today and made a big fuss, not to mention ruining there are people in the art studio including her. Ms. Lu now blindly believes that Duan-Gielan cannot cause trouble, and even asked herself to report it to the official. Of course, Lily cannot be involved in such a thing. Therefore, as soon as Mr. Lu finished speaking, Lily stood but he didn't move. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 1087. Go and report to the official, Ms. Lu shouted at the top of her lungs. Several people from Huachunfang who followed the policeman blocked the door of Buzz Wang at the mother's signal. Lily could see clearly that, let alone these people blocking the door, she might not be able to get out even if she wanted to report to an official. Even if they didn't block the door, she never thought about reporting to an official for Duan-Gielan. At this time, Ms. Lu was determined that Duan-Gielan had been assassinated, and she could no longer control herself. But Lily knew very well in her heart that before she destroyed the prostitute boat in Huachunfang, she clearly saw Duan-Gielan holding Shen Tenguan's hand and preparing to leave the painting workshop. After she destroyed the painting workshop, a large number of sisters and benefactors the guests fell into the water, and Duan-Gielan must have been one of them, but Lily knew that Duan-Gielan could swim, and the painting studio was not far from the shore at that time, and there were many people on the river embankment at that time. She just fell into the water, and even if Duan-Gielan's swimming skills were unfamiliar, it would not be difficult to be rescued. As for why he hasn't returned home yet, Lily guessed that Duan Gilan knew that he had caused a big trouble this time and didn't dare to go home. It's ridiculous that Mrs. Lu is so partial to Duan Gilan. At this time, she still thinks that she was raped by Hua Chunfang. Lily lowered her head and stood still. When Mrs. Lu saw this scene, a fire surged out of her heart, and she shouted sternly. I asked you to report to the official and get your sister back. Are you deaf? Mrs. Lu was furious at this moment. Even though the old monster in Hua Chunfang said that she couldn't stand Duan Gilan's appearance, she still couldn't stand it. His own daughter would not dare to get into such big trouble for no reason, not to mention that no matter how stupid Duan Gilan was, she was not without sense. Why did she go to Hua Chunfang for no reason? Report to the official. Heard Liu's words and sneered twice. I do want to report to the official. You are the only one who can treat your ugly girl as a treasure. Do you want me to abduct her? Bah! That's a mistake. No one wants the money. Any girl I can pick at random is 1,000 times better than her. I won't do this kind of loss-making business. You can report it to the official. But for my painting studio, you have to give me this money. The account has been settled. Shameless old goblin, you hid my daughter. You are a vicious woman who deserves to die a good death. You should go to the 18th level of hell. Now you dare to pour dirty water on my daughter. Mrs. Lu was very angry now. But because of her injury, she was not good at walking. At this time, she wished she could have a fight with the girl from Hua Chunfang. But she was suffering from her unsatisfactory body, so she could only shout loudly, no matter how stupid my daughter is, she still knows what kind of place your Hua Chunfang is. She went to that dirty place for no reason. What are you doing? Your stinking place, only mud like you can regard it as a treasure, bah! You have polluted my village by coming in. That woman was not a bad person, and Mrs. Liu's words really touched the pain deep in her heart. Xiaofang prostitutes are of low status. Once they get into this quagmire, even if they redeem themselves in the future, it will be a waste. A lifelong stain cannot be lifted up. Duan Gilan and others destroyed her own coffin today, and now Mrs. Lu is still arguing that she has harmed her daughter, and now she dares to say that she is mud. How could she be able to bear it, and immediately saved her Xiaoxi rushed towards Lu. Ms. Lu had long been worried that her daughter would be abducted by her. I want to fight her tooth and nail. It's just that her legs were so painful that she couldn't walk at this moment. She rushed over. Not to be outdone, she reached out and tore the Hua Chunfang woman on the head. For a while, the two women were scolding and fighting, and the scene was very ugly. The woman in Hua Chunfang has been enjoying herself a lot in recent years. Although she has a fierce temperament, her body is not very strong, but she is younger than Mrs. Lu, and Mrs. Lu has injured her leg and is unable to walk. What's more, this woman was a sister in her early years, and her clothes were torn. She didn't take it seriously, but Ms. Lu, because she was a widowed woman, the woman was very cunning and specialized in tearing her clothes, which made Ms. Lu feel ashamed and angry, and finally had to pull the hand that was holding the woman's hair away. Let go and hold onto your clothes tightly. In this way, Ms. Lu was controlled by others, and the woman saw clearly her good face and was afraid of making a fool of herself, so she tore her clothes and skirts. Mrs. Lu was wearing a slant-collared top. When the collar was torn open, a portion of her neck and shoulders were exposed. When the woman saw that this trick was effective, she immediately ignored her and not only tore Ms. Liu's clothes, but also came to pull her hair, and occasionally stretched out his hand to pull a few bloody marks on her face. For a while, the two women were fighting fiercely, and the people around them were pointing fingers, but they did not dare to come in to stop them because of the Hua Chunfang nursing home brought by the woman. Everyone was talking and shaking their heads. Ms. Liu's face turned red with embarrassment, and her face was still burning from being scratched. Although this woman was not very strong, her attacks were ruthless. She was not someone who had been doing things all year round. Her nails were very long, and she could be cruelly grabbed off. She felt as if her cheek was about to be torn off a piece of skin. Ms. Lu stretched out her hands and grabbed her clothes tightly. It was too late to fight back. The woman even kicked the wound on her foot, causing Ms. Lu to turn over. Not fit. At first, Ms. Lu gritted her teeth and endured it, but finally she couldn't bear it anymore. The woman actually used her nails to dig into her eyes. Fortunately, her eyelids closed quickly. Although her eyeballs were not injured, she picked out a piece of skin on her eyelids. It hurt so much that Ms. Lu burst into tears. With tears in her eyes, she saw Lily standing in the cloth shop as if she was petrified, motionless. Under normal circumstances, Ms. Lu might have been stunned into unconsciousness if she encountered such an unexpected accident. But at this time, her little daughter was nowhere to be seen, and she didn't know what was going on now. She was also struck by this old man. The goblin was beaten like this, and her clothes were torn to pieces. As a victim, Ms. Lu naturally found it difficult to calm down. She was already on fire in her heart, but now she was in pain and shame, so she couldn't think of anything. Without thinking, he shouted at Lily. Duan Bei. Are you a dead person? Didn't you see your mother being beaten? Didn't you know you came here to help? She herself was torn off her clothes, but she never thought that if her eldest daughter came too, what will happen to your reputation in the future if your clothes are torn off? Ms. Lu couldn't think about that much at this time. She even turned the insult and anger she received today into anger and vented it all on Lily. For a moment, anger arose in her heart and evil came from her courage. She endured the pain and pushing away the hair that was tearing at her hair, Lu saw from the corner of her eye the wooden ruler and scissors that she usually used to measure cloth for customers on the counter. Without thinking, Ms. Lu grabbed it and held it in one hand. Holding the scissors in his hand, waved it hard at the woman twice. At the beginning of the fight, the woman was really hurt by Liu's words. Now that the fight was over, although Lu was injured, the woman herself also suffered a lot seeing that Ms. Lu was really angry now. With a knife in her hand, she had already vented most of her anger after beating her, so there was no need to confront her head on, so the woman straightened her clothes and snorted coldly. Cried out. I'm beating a shameless person like you. Today I really opened my eyes. I've seen a lot of all kinds of people, but I've rarely seen people like you named Duan. No wonder you can raise a bitch like you, your shameless daughter. Ms. Liu's hair was a mess at the moment. When the woman stepped away, she pulled out a strand of her hair. Her scalp was throbbing with pain. She only felt that there was a suffocation in her chest, and she couldn't breathe anymore. Unable to swallow, tears flowed down involuntarily. She felt that she had never been in such a miserable state in her life. When she pulled her clothes together, her hands were still shaking. She was too stiff to obey her orders. She shook and shook. Yes, there was a crushing pain in her chest. When she heard what said, Ms. Lu glanced at Lily hatefully, obviously hating Lily. I asked you to report to the official. Are you a dead person? Did you watch your mother being beaten to death and you didn't care? You, who deserve to be struck by lightning and retribution, why did you give birth to you in the first place? If I had known, I would have beaten you to death when you were born. Ms. Lu didn't really dislike her eldest daughter, but she was angry at this moment, and the only thing she could vent her anger to was the Lily in front of her. Her words, as soon as he said it, Lily's expression suddenly turned cold. How do I go to report to the official? Didn't you see anyone guarding the door? She was telling the truth, but Ms. Lu couldn't listen to this at all now. On the contrary, she was even more angry when she heard Lily talk back. He came and threw the scissors in his hand towards Lily without thinking. Lily turned her head to hide, and the scissors narrowly missed her face and fell into the pile of cloth behind her, pulling out a long slit in the roll of cloth. Mrs. Lu smashed something, but the anger in her heart has not subsided. You dead girl, a short-lived evil, you are born to be angry with me, you are a heartless thing, your sister does not know whether she is alive or dead, and you don't care. She has been splashed with such a huge amount of sewage, and you still don't care. Now that your mother has been beaten like this, you don't even ask, are you happy to see me die in front of you? Do you want to make me angry to death? Ms. Lu slapped the counter, cursing in her mouth. The mother-in-law herself didn't expect Mrs. Lu to suddenly get angry at her eldest daughter. She was a little stunned, but quickly came to her senses. Humph, you two, mother and daughter, don't sing the double act in front of me. This. Mother, before she could finish her words, she had her hands on her hips and was about to curse. Suddenly Duan Gilan's clear voice rang out from outside. When she heard her daughter's voice, her heart that was originally raised finally fell back to where it was. Why are there so many people? What are you doing in front of our shop? Duan Gilan's somewhat dissatisfied voice sounded, and soon the crowd was pushed away by her. At this moment, Duan Gilan, who was still a little wet, appeared in front of everyone. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1088. Her hair was still wet, and she was wearing a set of white clothes that she got from somewhere. It clung to her body, clearly showing the curves of her body. After the white breasts were soaked, even the red belly band she was wearing was looming. She squeezed into the crowd and saw so many people in her shop. She was surprised at first, and then saw the people guarding the door of the shop. When he saw a few big men standing by, he shouted impatiently, "Go away! Why are you being a watchdog at the door of my house?" As soon as these words were spoken, the big men clenched their fists. If the head of Hua Chunfang in the shop hadn't spoken yet, I'm afraid they would have wanted to beat her to death at this moment. Duan Gilan squeezed in, and her eyes fell on Lily first. Somehow, she suddenly thought of Shen Tengguanlei, and when she looked at Lily's eyes, she felt guilty and resentful. Mother. As soon as Duan Gilan opened his mouth, Hua Chunfang's face showed a ferocious look. He reached out and caught her, and shouted loudly, "Okay, you bitch, I caught her." After hearing this, Duan Gilan came back to her senses. At this moment, she didn't care to look at Mrs. Lu anymore. When she turned around and saw the woman with a fierce expression, she was startled at first, and then a little bit guilty. Let go. Seeing that she still dared to have such an arrogant attitude at this moment, and thinking of the trouble she caused in Hua Chunfang, without even thinking about it, he raised his hand and slapped her on the cheek. For 15 years, Duan Gilan had a naive and reckless personality, and she liked to get into trouble on weekdays, but Mrs. Lu also indulged and doted on her. Although she usually talked about her, Duan Gilan would be criticized once. She always talks back. Except for the spanking she received from Lily a few days ago, Gilan has never been slapped in the face in her life. At first, she was too surprised to see her. Therefore, she was not prepared at all, but at this moment there was a crisp sound, her head was hit to the side, and Duan Gilan quickly came to her senses. Her character has always been fearless. If there is any trouble, you have to get into it first. As for the sky falling, there will always be tall people who can hold it up. Anyway, no matter how many troubles she has gotten into in the past 15 years, she has not come out of it smoothly. Without thinking, she reached out and slapped on the face. Didn't expect her to fight back, so Duan Gilan slapped her right in the face. You dare to hit me? Who are you? My mother has never hit me once since she was a child, and you dare to hit me. Duan Gilan was furious at this moment. He grabbed the woman, pulled her hair, slapped her face 4 or 5 times, until her face crackled, and soon became swollen and the corners of her mouth were broken. At first, the woman only thought that Duengilan had caused trouble, but she was still a little guilty anyway. She never thought that Duengilan would dare to be arrogant after causing such a big trouble. If Duengilan is a queen from a famous family, or the government lady, she will take the loss today, but Duengilan is nothing, ruining her support for the rest of her life, and now she dares to be so fierce. That woman is usually a ruthless master. In this line of work, if her heart is not strong enough, how can she force a good girl into prostitution? Once she was beaten and in pain, she was pushed away by Duengilan and kicked. She didn't say anything either. After crawling several steps away, she sat on the ground, pointed at Duengilan and shouted, "Catch her!" As soon as these words fell, the few big men who had been called watchdogs by Duengilan could no longer bear it. At this time, after receiving the order, they all rushed towards Duengilan. At first Lu herself was beaten. He was still filled with hatred in his heart. When he saw that his little daughter came back, he sought revenge for himself. He slapped the shameless woman so many times that her mouth was broken and bleeding, as if she had taken revenge for herself. Mrs. Lu was secretly happy, but she didn't expect that this woman was so shameless that after being beaten, she actually let people come to arrest her daughter. The opponents are all big and sturdy men. No matter how strong Duengilan is, she is still a girl who is prone to disadvantage. If she is caught, she will be unlucky. In desperation, Mrs. Lu pointed at Duengilan and shouted at Lily, "Are you a dead person who just watched your sister being bullied?" After hearing this, Lily rolled her eyes and remained silent. She was not prepared to expose her martial arts skills, and Mrs. Lu didn't know Lily had martial arts at all. In the eyes of others, Lily was just a weak and slender woman, and Duengilan looked much stronger than her. Mrs. Lu was only worried that something would happen if Duengilan was caught, but she never thought that if her eldest daughter got caught by someone, wouldn't it be obvious that she would die? Mrs. Lu is confused when she cares, but her partiality is indeed boundless. Lily stood still. Seeing her like this, Ms. Lu jumped in anger, but there was nothing she could do. She had to jump on her own feet, endured the pain and jumped out of the counter, holding a wooden ruler in her hand to help. Duengilan just hit back and hit someone just because of her instinct. Now when she spoke, several men blocked the road. Although her body was stronger than that of ordinary girls, she was still inferior to men. In addition, today I fell into the water and was frightened. I escaped from the river with a man all the way. In fact, I was very tired. At this time, I was caught before I could run 2 steps. My hands were held up and I couldn't struggle anymore. What are you going to do? After hearing this, just sneered again and again, with a very sinister expression on his face, "What are you doing? You bitch, you ruined my art studio, and you dare to attack me. I won't teach you a lesson today." With that said, the woman picked up the scissors that Lu had thrown when she smashed Lily, and got closer and closer to Duengilan. When the tip of the scissors was almost touching Duengilan's face, Duengilan didn't start to feel scared until now. She was not very courageous. After all, she was just a little girl. She was not afraid of anything when she got into trouble. That was because she had never thought about it. How serious the consequences of the matter were. It wasn't until I met the lady from Huachanfang, someone who didn't dote on her and follow her like Mrs. Lu, and who could do nothing if she talked back to her, that I felt afraid. In Duengilan's heart, she cried out with a cry. The scissors had already poked into her face, and the vicious look on her face seemed to scratch her face, and she turned blue with fear. Trembling, and asked, "It's none of my business. I didn't damage your painting studio. You can go find someone else." She was not the one who made a big fuss in the painting studio today. To be precise, she did go to make trouble, but at the worst she just beat the turtle slave and broke some wine cups, bowls, and chopsticks in the painting studio. My mother will pay you for the ruined table. How much money is it? Duan Gilan desperately wanted to turn her head to avoid the scissors, but her head was pressed tightly and she couldn't turn her head at all. Hearing Duan Gilan's words, the woman gritted her teeth with hatred and sneered. How much money? The ruined table? You, a cloth shop like me, can't afford to pay for my painting studio. Fortunately, no one died today. Otherwise, if someone had died, even if they put you in jail, the county magistrate would chop off your head. This damn girl is in trouble. At this moment, she thought it was just a table of money. Her eyes turned green. Thinking of the slaps she had just received, the girl named Duan still spoke in such a tone. It's unbearable. She took the scissors and slapped Duan Gilan on the face with all her strength. With a pop sound, Duan Gilan couldn't even scream. The pain when the scissors hit his face was different from the pain when a slap hit his face. The scissors were originally made of iron. On her face, her teeth softened first, and then blood quickly spread out of her mouth. Duan Gilan didn't notice it for a moment, and swallowed a mouthful of food with a gudong sound. When the pain began to pass into her consciousness, she didn't have time to cry out. Remembering the scene of being beaten just now, she found that the scissors hit her smoothly, so she picked up the scissors and slapped her face hard. This time the shot was a bit off, hitting Duan Gilan on the temple, hitting her so hard that stars appeared in her eyes. Her head felt like she had been hit with a heavy stick, and she had a splitting headache. Duan Gilan screamed and struggled desperately, "Mother, mother, save me. You just dared to slap me, I told you to slap me, I told you to slap me." Every time he gritted his teeth and said a word, the woman slapped Duan Gilan's face hard. After only 5 or 6 slaps, Duan Gilan's face was already blue and purple. The corners of her mouth were broken and full of blood, and with a wow sound, the blood mixed with the 2 teeth and were knocked out. Duan Gilan's eyes were hit twice, so that her eye sockets were swollen and she couldn't open her eyes at all. Although Lily had beaten Duan Gilan once a few days ago, that time Lily only wanted to hit her to hurt her. Unlike this time, the beating seemed to kill her, and she cursed every time she hit her. She said a few words with an expression as if she wanted to eat someone. Only then did Duan Gilan realize that she was really scared. She screamed for mercy and called Ms. Lu for help. At first Ms. Lu was stunned and couldn't recover, until she heard her daughter's cry. Ms. Lu was desperate and wanted to rush over, but she was no match for her just now. Now she left the counter with only one leg intact. And without any support, she was suddenly pushed to the ground by her body. "Get away from me!" Hit someone at this time, and the anger in his heart was a little vented. Looking at Duan Gilan's miserable appearance, the resentment disappeared a little, and seeing Ms. Lu being pushed to the ground by him, screamed in agony. Was about to open, when someone outside shouted in a panic. "Stop it!" In the crowd, Shen Tenguin, who was still looking a little embarrassed, pushed through the crowd and squeezed into Duan's cloth shop. When he entered the cloth shop, he saw that he had been beaten into a human shape, and a small pile of vomited in front of him. Blood was still dripping from the corner of Duan Gilan's mouth. Shen Tenguin felt a pain in his heart, and an inexplicable anger surged up from his heart. When he saw that the woman was still holding the scissors in his hand, he shouted sharply. "Is there any more royal law? In broad daylight, you break into people's houses and cause trouble. According to the law, you can be sent to the official and sentenced. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 1089. If on a normal day, the woman in Huachunfang saw Shen Tenguin and knew that he was an 18-year-old young scholar, she might be a little bit mean to him. After hearing what he said, the matter would be smoothed over with a smile. But what happened today was extremely good. Du and Gilan left with Shen Tenguin at that time. What's more, when they were in the painting studio, Du and Gilan came to look for Shen Tenguin one by one. The woman in painting Chunfang probably also knew about what happened today. Du and Gilan, even if it was the main reason for the trouble, at the end of the day, it had something to do with the person named Shen. Hearing Shen Tenguin speak, the woman in Hua Chunfang stabbed him with a knife in her heart, but she forced a smile on her face. Xiu Cai Lang, listen to me. Today's matter has nothing to do with you. You should go home quickly. After all, he is a scholar, and the woman in Hua Chunfang didn't want to offend him too much, so she suppressed her good words. She desperately wanted him to leave and stop flowing into this muddy water. As early as an hour ago, Shen Tenguin didn't have a good impression of the two ladies of the Duan family. I'm afraid the woman in Hua Chunfang just didn't say this, and he didn't want to meddle in these nosy matters. But it's different now. After hearing Duan Gilan's unintentional after the truth spoken in his ears when he was in a coma, he felt sorry for this innocent and kind-hearted silly girl who was taken advantage of by Mrs. Duan. He already had such a different liking for Duan Gilan in his heart. Naturally, this matter it would be impossible to stay out of it. What's more, Duan Gilan was beaten like this in front of him. He was saved by her before. If he didn't leave now, what kind of man would he be? Shen Tenguin suppressed the strange feeling in his heart, and kept a gentle face. Although this matter has nothing to do with me, the road is high. If there is any injustice, everyone will step on it. This is true all over the world. It works anywhere, he scolded first. Then he added, you have to be merciful and merciful. Is it too much for my mother to be so cruel to a young girl? The woman in Hua Chunfang originally wanted to sell him off as a scholar, but she simply didn't want to cause any more trouble. But it didn't mean that she was afraid of Shen Tenguin. Seeing that he had trouble, she didn't know how to put it aside, but took the initiative to take the trouble on him, so she couldn't help but sneer. I originally didn't want to argue with you, but I didn't expect you to come forward. If you want to talk to me, you are worthy. Bah, the woman in Hua Chunfang said to the ground. With a sound, Shen Tenguin's fair face turned red, and she spoke again, I think you have read all the books into the dog's belly. Is this bitch here for you today? I heard her say it over and over again. You are still her future brother-in-law, a shameless thing. This is the first time in my life that I have seen a man visiting a cellar. My future sister-in-law has come to catch/rape her. The two of you are having sex in the shop. Shameless. A disheveled person with no girlish elegance and shameless behavior. None of the girls on my ship can do that. This little bitch named Duan has not left the government, but she has learned all the trades. The woman in Hua Chunfang was full of anger at the moment, and she didn't show any shame when she scolded people. You have the nerve to talk about a childish girl. Is there any girl like her who chases a man to a brothel, takes off her clothes and cuddles with the man? You two may have had an affair for a long time. Usually in private we committed adultery. We just hid it from that lady. Today she used my boat shop as a way to make her angry. This little bitch is unmarried and is messing around. She is also very jealous. She knows you are prostitutes. So she used my boat. Fanger was treated like a punching bag, hitting me this way and bumping me that way. It completely destroyed the rest of my life. The woman in Hua Chunfang was sharp-tongued. She opened her mouth and burst into tears. While slapping her thighs and howling, she pointed at Shen Tenguin and cursed. People around her were stunned. Duan Gilan was beaten until her nose was bruised and her face was swollen, and she could not speak out for a long time. Although what she said was true, she was lying about the reason. Unfortunately, she could not open her mouth. She was ashamed and angry, and her eyes were deformed by the beating. Tears flowed from his eyes again. When Mrs. Lu heard this, she was stunned and couldn't recover for a long time. She had just seen this wet man rushing into the store, and now she heard his surname was Shen, and heard the woman from Huachunfang say he was some kind of eldest lady's future husband. At this moment, Mrs. Lu still didn't understand Shen Tenguin identity. From what the woman in Huachunfang said, Mrs. Lu also guessed that Duan Gilan had really gone to the shipyard to cause trouble today. At first she thought someone else had wrongly accused Duan Gilan, but then she heard what the woman from Huachunfang said might be true. Now that Duan Gilan had caused such a big incident, Lu felt like the world was spinning and her whole body was spinning. I could barely raise my voice, and I couldn't find the strength to get up from sitting on the ground. You are such a mouthful. Me, Mrs. Duan and I have never met before. Shen Tenguin heard the woman from Huachunfang pouring dirty water on herself. She was so angry that she was trembling all over, and her teeth were clenching. Noise, the whole person is not feeling well. But the woman in Huachunfang didn't believe what he said. She only sneered 3 times when she heard what he said. You can coax a 3-year-old with these words, but you can't coax an old lady. If she has never met before, how did this young lady know that you were going to the art studio and sneak up to catch you disguised as a man? If they didn't know each other, who would know about a strange man or woman? Hug each other and roll into a ball without any shame? Tell me, would your daughter do this? The woman in Huachunfang flipped her hair and turned to ask the people watching the theater outside. Hearing what she said, the neighbors outside all said ba in unison, flicked their sleeves, took a few steps back with a look of disgust on their faces, and that expression was self-evident. Shen Tenguin also felt that what he said sounded really untenable, but in fact, it was the first time that he and Duan Gilan met today. They had never met before, but now they are dumb and eating huanglian, and no one can tell them. Believed. Sigh. The pure will be pure by themselves, and the turbid will be turbid by themselves. I don't need to explain so much to you. It's just that the state has national laws, and families have family rules. Madame Duan did make a mistake today, but the crime will not lead to death, and you can't abuse lynching. You are neither the master of Qingtian nor a judge of the Ministry of Justice, so why can you slap her? Ba, listening to the docile man he was talking about, he didn't know what he was talking about. The woman in Huachunfang said Ba impatiently, she is only allowed to beat me, but I am not allowed to beat her? I don't see it. My face was beaten like this. Shen Tenguin was silenced by her again. When he saw Duan Gilan, who was being held up and unable to cry, a little heartache flashed in Shen Tenguin's eyes. Mrs. Duan is such a pitiful person. I'm afraid you don't know that your girl has secretly crossed over to Chenkang with your future husband, right? The woman in Huachunfang turned to stare at Lily. After hearing this, Shen Tenguin followed. She looked over and found Lily, who had been standing silently in the corner. Until now, this was the first time that Shen Tenguin really saw Lily. The moment he saw Lily, Shen Tenguin's eyes showed a bit of surprise at first, but soon the surprise turned into boredom, and he turned his head away. Go, remembering that this lady's appearance is even worse than what her mother said, but when she thinks of her heart like a snake and a scorpion, Mrs. Lu has always been partial to her. Before she have really made a marriage contract, she first sent her own sister to monitor her, and then she hid aside silently when Duan Gilan was beaten so miserably because of her actions. All these things made Shen Tenguin decide in Shen Tenguin's heart that Lily was the impression of a vicious villain. Don't talk nonsense. Madame Duan and I have not made a 3-life contract. It's just nonsense from others. How can we take what we hear as true? Shen Tenguin has already made up his mind at this moment. Such a snake and scorpion woman, he must not get involved. He flatly denied that he and Lily had made an engagement, and decided that no matter what method he used after returning, his mother would never propose marriage to this great lady. His denial made not only the woman in Huachunfang stunned for a moment, but also Mrs. Lu, who was sitting on the ground. Duan Gilan, who was beaten to death, heard this in a daze, raised her head and stared at him, her eyes full of disbelief. "You." Two of her teeth were knocked out, and the rest were loose. Now that I opened my mouth, my cheekbones were unbearably sore, and my entire face was so numb that I couldn't feel the pain. Duan didn't know why, but when she heard Shen Tenguin's words, a feeling of sadness and relief came to her heart. As if she had been wronged, her tears fell harder and she cried harder. "Mr. Shen." Mrs. Lu became anxious only at this moment. She was so panicked that she thought Shen Tenguin had seen the scandal in her Duan family and now wanted to regret the marriage. She was as anxious as an ant on a hot pot. At this time, I only felt that my life was miserable, and I also felt that God was deliberately trying to test the Duan family and brought such disasters one after another. If the eldest daughter's marriage has another setback this time, it may not be so easy to find a suitable in-laws in the future. As soon as she opened her mouth, Shen Tenguin suddenly said firmly and seriously, "The girl I want to marry is indeed a girl from the Duan family, but it is not Mrs. Duan, but the second girl Duan." At that moment, Shen Tenguin had already made up his mind. "Well, the one I want to marry is Duan Gilan." He also knows that after today's incident, Duan Gilan's reputation will be ruined in the future, and it will be difficult for her to marry again in the future. She is still so young, and her life will be so long in the future. If she ruins it for a sister who is like a snake and wants to harm her, it would be too unworthy to spend a lifetime. But fortunately, because of Mrs. Duan's self-assertion, I finally got to know a person with a kind and beautiful soul. No matter how fierce she pretends to be, she is still innocent and kind. Her family doesn't care about her, and her mother prefers Mrs. Duan, so let herself care about her in the future. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 1090. Duan Gilan was stunned by Shen Tenguin's words. At the same time, she almost forgot about her situation. She seemed a little ashamed and a little happy, as if a happy event had been sent to her from the sky, which made her a little overwhelmed. Everyone couldn't come to their senses and didn't know what the fuss was about today, except Lily, who was very calm. She had already expected all this, and what was supposed to happen in the plot happened at this time. It's just that the trouble Duan Gilan got into in the plot was not so big. In the plot, when the woman from Hua Chunfang came to her door, she didn't make such a fuss, and Duan Gilan didn't get her face smashed. She was in trouble at that time until I didn't go home until dark, and I don't know where I hid. When the original owner saw the woman from Hua Chunfang coming to his door, he stupidly went to stop her, but was slapped several times in the face by the woman from Hua Chunfang in public. She was so embarrassed that she hid behind her and cried, not knowing that Shen Tenguin was there. Never appeared. Because Duan Bei had been beaten at that time, and the women in Hua Chunfang did not suffer much loss, so after Lu lost a small amount of money, in addition to Duan Bei losing face, Duan Gilan got a wishful husband, and Shen Tenguin found the beloved, Mr. Liu's favorite son-in-law Cheng Longkui did not become someone else's. He had nothing except Duan Bei, and everyone else was smiling. At this time, Lily didn't care about Shen Tenguin at all, and she had already known that he would not be hers. Therefore, Shen Tenguin's sudden change of heart did not make her want to die in pain like the original owner in the plot did when she heard the news. She just watched with cold eyes, watching Shen Tenguin confess his affection to Duan Gilan and promised to marry her in public, which made Lily almost unable to hold back and burst out laughing. This. Mrs. Lu was so anxious that she almost shouted out when she heard Shen Tenguin say that she was not engaged to her eldest daughter. But then she heard the news that Shen Tenguin was going to propose marriage to Duan Gilan, and she was stunned. After she came to her senses, Mrs. Lu couldn't help but feel moved. Things have progressed to this point. Duan Gilan's reputation must have been ruined. She came back wearing a wet underwear. Shen Tenguin looked like she was in a similar situation, not to mention that she had gone to a brothel to cause trouble. After the woman from Huachunfang spread the word, all the neighbors knew about it, and the matter could not be suppressed. Duan Gilan's reputation is not very good in this area of Huicheng. Because of her, no matter how good Lily looks and has a gentle temperament, she still can't get married now. Duan Gilan's reputation is even worse now that he is causing trouble. She is not good looking either. Who will marry her in the future? If Shen Tenguin is willing to marry her, then it will be done. First of all, if Shen Tenguin is really willing to take this responsibility, Duan Gilan's trip to the brothel will no longer be about the sister-in-law going to catch her future brother-in-law, but the fiancé going to find out the whereabouts of her fiancé. Although the reputation may not be as good as the reputation, it is still better than the former. Furthermore, although Beihi's marriage to the Shen family has been verbally agreed upon, but to the outside world, she is only said to be the Duan family's wife. As for which girl, as long as she and the Duan family insist that she is the youngest daughter, others will only gossip about her behind her back. If the younger daughter gets married and the older daughter looks better than her, it will be much easier than Duan Gilan to choose someone else. At this moment, even though Mrs. Lu knew she was sorry for Lily, she still hoped that the bowl of water would be fair. Lily could not marry Shen Tenguin now. But she will have another chance in the future. She is beautiful and has a gentler temperament than Duan Gilan. As long as there is no trouble-making girl, Lily will definitely find someone she likes. The worst possible outcome will be after Duan Gilan gets married. I should pay more attention to Lily, lest she say I'm being unfair. Think of this. Although Ms. Lu was a little apologetic, she still suppressed her guilty feeling and did not dare to look at Lily again. She remained silent in response to Shen Tenguin's words and adopted the default position. Oh, I really watched a good show. The woman in Huachunfang did not expect that the situation would take a turn for the worse and end up like this. No matter how ruthless the woman was, she couldn't help but look at Lily with a bit of sympathy. It's really a mung bean and a bastard. You've seen it right. There are good-looking and beautiful girls who don't want it, but they don't want it. Some people are just cheap and like the mud in the pond. How can a sparrow know the ambition of a swan? A woman's view is that her hair is long but her knowledge is short. How do you know whether this is the mud in the pond or the white lotus that emerges from the mud but remains unstained? Once the identity was confirmed, Shen Tenguin looked at Duan Gilan again. At that moment, I was filled with heartache. When I heard the irony in S words, I couldn't help but reply to her, some people are not good looking on the surface, but they are much better than those beauties who are beautiful on the outside but like snakes and scorpions on the heart. Now, my mother is only in the business of bringing in and out, and all she sees are the people in the theater. Sure enough, she only sees people based on their superficial appearance, just like those dog eyes, which always look down upon people. Shen Tenguin's face changed when she said these words. Before she could speak, Shen Tenguin ignored her and turned to stare at Lily. Ms. Duan, am I right? If Mr. Sir doesn't look at the dog, how do you know that the dog is looking at you? Mr. Shen, I wonder if I am wrong in what I said. Seeing that he still wanted to come to her to find a sense of presence after sarcasm, Lily curled her lips and said, when he said this back to him, Shen Tenguin's expression changed at first, and then he laughed loudly. Okay, what a sharp mouth, I'm glad to be defeated. Fortunately, God has the wisdom to allow Shen to be here. It's time to see the lady's true face, otherwise, as my mother said, my life will be ruined. His words were invisibly equivalent to a disguised admission in front of everyone that he had almost made a marriage contract with Lily before, but he didn't like her. Now it's just a matter of finding another good relationship. Lily narrowed her eyes after hearing what he said, to each other. Shen Tenguin snorted coldly. Today's incident has nothing to do with Madame Duan. Why is it that Chun Niang from Hua Chunfang came to the door now, and only Niang was beaten, but Madame Duan was unharmed? As he was talking, he actually brought the topic to himself. Lily heard it funny and frowned. What does it have to do with me? She was sure that no one would suspect her of her previous actions. On the body. No one would have thought that this weak-looking eldest lady of the Duan family could do martial arts, and that her martial arts was strong enough to destroy a painting studio. But Shen Tenguin's words were groundless. Lily frowned, and Ms. Liu's face was full of surprise. Everyone was confused by his words. When Shen Tenguin heard Beihe deny it, saying that it had nothing to do with her, he couldn't help but look down on her even more, thinking that she was simply someone who dared to do things but didn't dare to act. Villain. It's a pity that Duan Gilan was deceived by her when she was young, and now her face is almost deformed after being beaten by the grandma of Hua Chunfang, but Lily is still good. They are both close sisters, but this lady has a really bad conscience. Shen Tenguin was bored, and his face showed some of it. At this moment, Ms. Duan still doesn't admit it? Do you really think that no one knows what you did? He kept saying what he did, and Lily was really curious. If I did it, of course I will admit it. If I haven't done it, how can I recognize it? At this point, he had given her opportunities again and again, but he didn't expect Lily to still not shed tears without seeing the coffin. Shen Tenguin sneered twice. Originally, Shen wanted to save some face for Ms. Duan. If you had taken a little responsibility, Shen would have let it go. But now you dare not do it and blame the whole thing on Ms. Duan, but now you can ignore it. Clean, Shen is really shameless towards you. After he finished speaking, he paused and said, "It's true that the second lady was in the painting studio today, it's true, but do you know the reason why she came?" He stood up, glanced across the shop one by one, and raised his voice to ask the people standing outside. When everyone heard what he said, Monk Zhong'er was confused. The woman in Hua Chunfang covered her mouth and smiled. "Why are you here? Aren't you here for Mr. Shen? I miss men, and chasing men is too much." She hated Duan Gilan, and she spoke without any mercy at this moment, but in Shen Tenguin's heart, she couldn't help but feel that Duan Gilan was even more unworthy. It was clear that Ms. Duan was the initiator of this matter, but Duan Gilan was responsible for the final result. How could a 15-year-old girl bear the gossip from outsiders? If I didn't propose marriage to her today, wouldn't she be drowned in the saliva of outsiders? He was angry in his heart, but he forcibly calmed down on his face. "It's true that you came here for me, but there is a reason." Aunt Duan learned that there was a reason for the second lady to go to the painting studio today. Speaking of this, Shen Tenguin pointed at Lily. "The reason is her, Ms. Duan." Upon hearing this, everyone was stunned for a moment, not understanding the meaning of his words. Liu's face showed a look of confusion. Duan Gilan, who was beaten to death, was dizzy at this time. Hearing this, he was the only one. People who understood Shen Tenguin's misunderstanding thought that when she was in the painting studio, Shen Tenguin made random guesses that she had accepted the offer in order to escape guilt. At this time, she saw him mentioning it in public. It would have been fine if Lily was not in the shop, but she was in the shop. It would be really embarrassing if the face-to-face confrontation was revealed. Although Duan Gilan has a naughty temper, she is still only a 15-year-old girl after all. At this time, she felt a little panicked, but then she thought about it again. Fortunately, she was beaten like this and couldn't open her mouth to speak. She really escaped a disaster. She had also thought about it. If Shen Tenguin asked about it again in the future, even if he knew that he had been cheated, he would not say anything. It was all his own guess. If he guessed wrong, he could not blame himself. Thinking of this, Duan Gilan breathed a sigh of relief. "The reason is me? What does it have to do with me?" Lily asked, and Ms. Lu also looked suspicious. When she heard Shen Tenguin admitting that Duan Gilan had indeed made a big fuss in the painting workshop, she felt a breath in her heart. At this moment she felt a little bad all over, and when she heard that the eldest daughter was responsible for this, she immediately stared at Lily fiercely, as if she wanted to eat someone. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 1091. No wonder Ms. Lu felt something was wrong. Although her youngest daughter Duan Gilan has a bad temper and likes to get into trouble, she is not someone who cannot distinguish the priorities of things. Even if she gets into trouble, it is impossible for her to cause such a catastrophic disaster. If there is someone behind her, when someone said that someone was provoking him, Mr. Lu believed it. When she thought that her eldest daughter might be responsible for her younger daughter's intrusion, a fire surged up in Ms. Liu's heart. Duan Gilan doesn't understand, so doesn't Lily understand too? Although the family runs a cloth shop and has a slight surplus, he is not a wealthy person and can only be considered well off at best. If he causes such a big disaster and has to pay for the painting studio, what will happen to the family's livelihood in the future? Isn't this Lily forcing herself to die? Moreover, when she came back after causing such a disaster, she also brought a disaster star like the woman from Huachunfang. Unfortunately, her legs and feet were not fully healed yet, so she was beaten up. The more Ms. Lu thought about it, the more angry and resentful she became. In addition, when Lily was fighting with Duan Gilan a few days ago, she almost broke her bones and her daughter showed no concern and greetings. She became more and more sure that she was evil and wanted to harm her. Thinking of this, Ms. Lu felt a chill in her heart. It has nothing to do with you. Shen Tenguin raised his voice, shook his head and sighed, it's so stubborn. After saying this, he suddenly said loudly, Mom, please listen to Shen Mao, let go of Ms. Duan first. I originally wanted to keep Ms. Duan's secret in order to protect her reputation, but now that Ms. Duan dares to do something, I don't care anymore. Shen has been reading books about sages since he was a child. He took the exam at the beginning of this year. I am a scholar and a person with a serious reputation in the imperial court. A few days ago, my cousin came to my home and said that she felt sorry for me because I had devoted myself to studying all these years. I had missed a lifelong event and fell in love with a girl named Duan from a family. She wanted to be a matchmaker for me. My mother was very happy when she heard it. She believed it to be true. Under the instigation of her aunt, she came to Duan's house. She didn't know how the lady was cheating. She coaxed my mother to believe it was true. After Shen Tenguin finished speaking, he gave Lily a cold look. After discussion, we decided to go back and choose a good and auspicious day to propose marriage. I had known that there was something fishy about this matter. Ms. Duan is 17 years old, but she is still unmarried. If it is true that my aunt and mother said such a beautiful thing, why is she so young? A lot of people are still unmarried. It's just a matter of marriage and the order of their parents. Although Shen was unhappy with the matchmaker's words, he still agreed because of his filial piety. But he was always depressed and unhappy until yesterday. Several classmates and friends knew that in my heart she was depressed, so she asked me to go out to relax. So today we made an appointment to have a small gathering at Huachunfang to talk about poetry and scriptures. In the middle of the conversation, Madame Duan showed up, and my mother also knew about this. Bei was also at Huachunfang at the time and saw this matter clearly, but she didn't say anything when she heard it. By this time, she naturally knew what Shen Tenguin meant about what she dared not do. She looked at Shen Tenguin with a sneer. When the woman who painted Chunfang heard this, she nodded, that's true. But what does this matter have to do with Ms. Duan? Although my mother and the Duan family have had discussions before, but the 8 characters are not in agreement, the betrothal gift has not yet been paid, and the melons and plums have not been paid, we should avoid some suspicion. Ms. Duan and I have never met. Why did she come to Hua Chunfang to catch her? My rape? After thinking about it, Shen thought that only Mrs. Duan would do this. I asked the second lady angrily at that time. If the incident was done under the instigation of the first lady, the second lady also admitted it at the time when Shen Tenguan said this. Even though the matter had passed, he was still angry when he said it. I am so jealous before I get married, and I know that Hua Chunfang is not a serious place, so I dare not come forward in person, but instructing my own sister to follow such a woman, Shen. Wait a minute. Lily listened to his serious nonsense and finally couldn't help it anymore. Shenzi, okay, I don't know how you conclude that I ordered my sister to spy on you. If it weren't for you, second lady has nothing to do with me, so why would she follow me? Shen Tenguan became even more angry when she heard that she still dared to ask herself, and shouted sternly, even now, you still don't know how to repent. At this moment, Bai he still didn't understand. In the middle of the plot, the marriage between Duan Baihe and Shen Tenguan had twists and turns. Shen Tenguan abandoned Duan Baihe and married another man in the end, and when he saw Duan Baihe afterwards, he looked disgusted. This is probably the reason. In the plot, the woman from Hua Chunfang also brought people to Duan's cloth village to cause trouble. At that time, Duan Baihe was eager to protect her mother and listen to Liu's words. However, she suffered a big loss and was caught and beaten by the woman from Hua Chunfang. Emil. The original owner had his feet bound at the time and was always docile and not very strong. Once he was beaten and the incident broke out, he was so ashamed and painful that he hid in the inner courtyard. Later, I heard that Shen Tenguan had also been here and stood up for the Duan family, which calmed the matter down. It's just that in the plot, Duan Gilan made a scene in Hua Chunfang, but it was not destroyed like it is today. Therefore, the woman in Hua Chunfang at that time got over her anger after beating Lily, and after Mrs. Lu agreed to compensate, both parties they all settled their grievances, but unlike this time, because their lives were destroyed, the woman in Hua Chunfang was very angry. In addition, Lily did not interfere in the fight between Lu and the woman, and Duan Gilan suddenly didn't know what to do. Life and death broke in, so things got worse and worse. After Duan Baihe hid at that time, Shen Tenguan probably misunderstood, but Lu and Duan Gilan did not explain it. Therefore, in Shen Tenguan's heart, Duan Baihe was cunning, and extremely vicious, so he finally chose his younger sister instead of his elder sister. Thinking of this, Lily glanced at Mrs. Lu coldly, but saw Mrs. Liu's expression flickering. She obviously understood what Shen Tenguan said, but she didn't know whether it was because she was too frightened to react, or for other reasons, and she didn't open her mouth to explain for herself. I don't need to repent. This matter has nothing to do with me. As for why my sister is following you, that's her business. You should ask her. Although Lily had never thought about marrying Shen Tenguan, she was unwilling to do it, for from now on, the couple lived in harmony and were blamed for this. Seeing that Shen Tenguan was unconvinced and wanted to speak, he interrupted him again. My sister and I are not close. Don't say that I asked her to follow you. Even if I ask her to hand me something, she may not be able to respond. As soon as she finished saying this, Lily saw the disdain on Shen Tenguan's face, obviously not believing what she said. As for the reason why I haven't married at the age of 17, Shenzi, okay, I will know as soon as he asks. My mother-in-law and I had arranged a marriage for me, and Gilan made a big fuss, which caused the Duan family to lose face and make a big embarrassment. That's why no one cares about the sisters so far. This is something that everyone in the neighborhood knows. If you don't believe it, just ask and you will know. Since it talks about evil intentions, I have to ask, Gilan, what grudge do I have against you? 1 year when I reached the age of hairpins, you made my Duan family a laughingstock in Huaicheng with all your nonsense. Now that my mother wants to arrange a marriage for me, you are making a big fuss again. Do you really hate me so much and want to ruin my life? Don't you? How important is it to know a girl's family name? Or do you know it, but want to make me lonely for the rest of my life? As soon as Lily said these words, Liu's expression changed. Lily's words were very serious. Liu actually believed that her little daughter was not such a vicious person. But then again, Duan Gilan may have never thought of harming Lily, but everything she did was unintentional. But he is really harming his eldest daughter. At first, Liu thought that what Shen Tenguin said was really the instigation of her eldest daughter. But when Shen Tenguin finished speaking, Liu was sure that the matter had nothing to do with Lily. As Lily said, the relationship between the two sisters has now become tense. They even had a fight a few days ago. The two of them usually don't speak to each other. If Lily wants to instigate Duan Gilan, this little daughter won't listen. She knew her daughter Moruomua. Liu guessed that because Lily's marriage was settled a few days ago, she praised Shenzioki everywhere, which made Duan Gilan unconvinced. This damn girl wanted to take a look at him. Look. Let's see if he is as capable as he says. It's just that the matter has come to this point. It's true that the youngest daughter made a big fuss in the painting studio. Her reputation has been ruined. Now Shen Tenguin has finally said that he wants to marry her. If he misses this village, how can he still marry in the future? Lily's marriage should not have been ruined, but it has been ruined now. Shen Tenguin has said in public that he will not marry her again, and he will definitely not marry her again. If one girl is destroyed, the other must not be destroyed, otherwise the Duan family will really be doomed. Duan Gilan is wanted now, so it would be best if she could get married. It's a pity that Lily is here at this time, otherwise this matter would be so good today. At that moment, Liu made a decision in her heart. Although she also thought that this matter was a bit unfair to her eldest daughter, and she did owe her in this matter, the palms of her hands and the backs of her hands were full of flesh. Now it was better to destroy one than to destroy both, Liu thought of this. Staring at Lily pleadingly, wanting her to stop talking and accept what Shen Tenguin said. In that case, even if Shen Tenguin hates Lily, once the two break off their engagement, they will have nothing to do with each other in the future. He will treat Duan Gilan well, which can be regarded as a good marriage. Thinking of this, Liu gritted her teeth and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? You two sisters have always been as close as if you were one person. Your sister has always respected you and listened to your words the most. How could it be possible for you to be lonely for the rest of your life?" As soon as Liu finished speaking, Lily turned her head. Her cold eyes made Liu feel hurt and weak. She couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable, but she took a deep breath. Now that it's all over, the decision was made, it's too late to regret it now. After hearing what Liu said, Shen Tenguin sneered, "Sure enough, he is full of nonsense, but now Aunt Duan has exposed it. You sisters have always been close, and the second wife respects you and listens to your words the most. If you ask her to go east, she will naturally not to the west. What a Duan family, what a Mrs. Duan, really ridiculous." Lily herself was fine at this moment, she just felt sorry for the original owner. Liu was so partial and talked nonsense like this in front of her. "I would rather save Duan Gilan than destroy myself." To be continued.